Lions, real-life fantasy rugby, bitter rivalries set aside in a quest to create the world's best team in weeks. There's nothing like it, but who on earth had the idea and how did it all begin? Incredibly, the first Lions tour was organised and funded by three men who played in England's first ever Test cricket match: opening bowler Alfred Shaw, opening batsman Arthur Shrewsbury and captain James Lillywhite. The 1888 Lions squad, then made up of 17 English, 4 Scots and 1 Welshman and a Northern Irishman, took a 46-day boat trip to New Zealand before heading to Australia. The Lions weren't alone on the boat. Also on board were 300 stoats and weasels, who were brought over to eliminate New Zealand's rabbit problem. The first ever Lions captain, Robert Seddon, died of drowning midway through the tour while sculling on a river. Andrew Stoddart, who was another of the cricketers there, took over and was the star of the tour. The next one was the first to get official recognition from the RFU against the newly formed Springboks. Although the Lions won the series and beat the Boks again 5 years later, in the 12 series since in South Africa, they've only won 2. New Zealand has proved an even tougher hunting ground, just the 1 series win for the Lions in 11 attempts, which came in 1971. And then there was that nail-shredding drawn series in 2017, only the second in Lions history. Only once have the Lions clinched a series after losing the first test, 1989, when David Campese's infamous ghost pass was pounced upon by Ian Evans. Before World War II, the Lions had a dark blue strip, which on the 1930 tour forced the All Blacks to play in all white. So in 1950, the iconic red shirts, white shorts and blue and green socks combination was born. It remains the symbol of the greatest alliance of adversaries in all of sport. To borrow the phrase from Jim Telfer, the Lions is Everest.
Hello and good evening. Welcome to the Transfer Insiders on talkSPORT. I am Hugh Woozencroft alongside former Chelsea and West Ham defender Scott Minto. We know already Eberechi Eze will not be playing for Crystal Palace tonight as his move to Arsenal draws close. But Eagles fans, how do you feel about losing him? Of course, he goes down as a club legend, but what does it mean next for the club, particularly if you lose defender Mark Gahey to boot? 03717 22 3344. We know the Spurs fans are absolutely gutted, but is their squad ready to compete on 4 fronts this season? And what does Eze's signing mean for Mikel Arteta? Does he have no excuses now at Arsenal? Also, is Graham Potter being held back by PSR at West Ham United? Do Manchester United need a goalkeeper and a midfielder to make sure they make Europe next season? And what about Chelsea? Are they set for a tilt at the title without any defensive additions? We want to hear from you. 03717 22 3344. This is Transfer Insiders on talkSPORT. Well, I hope everybody is well. Thank you for being with us. It's a weird one to say this, but I hope you're having the good end of the transfer window. Believe me, Forget EastEnders, forget Coronation Street. There is no soap opera that compares. This could easily be the transfer window to end all transfer windows. And I used to think, Scott, Minto, hello, good evening. I used to think that fans shouldn't celebrate transfers like they were trophies, like they were goals or whatever. You know, there's no guarantee of anything when you sign a player. They might flop, who knows? But, you know, the North London derby of transfers last night, for Arsenal to steal a player as good as Eberechi Eze away from Spurs, it wasn't a surprise that their fans were goading the opposition and celebrating that fact as well.
Yeah, look, do you know what? Good evening, by the way, and good evening to everybody. It's almost just get the popcorn, isn't it? And sit back and enjoy. And we still got the business end of the deadline day to come as well. And you do feel there will be, you know, if there's one or two, then there will be a real domino effect. We haven't still had that proper domino effect. There's a lot of clubs out there who I feel still needs strengthening, whether it's for their 11 or their bench for the rest of the season, or certainly until January at the very least. But that one, Eberechi Eze, I'm a massive fan of. When I was working on the EFL a few years ago, I was a big fan of his. I really was. Yeah. And for him to, I mean, it is kind of Spursy, isn't it, to come second in a one-horse race. And you have to, in my opinion, listen, he's a brilliant businessman, he's a brilliant accountant, but you have to criticise Daniel Levy for this, because Arsenal were not in the game up until the Havertz injury. So I think he's a great signing. He would have been a great signing for Spurs. I still think he'd be a great signing for Arsenal. I was having a chat with Henry Winter and Sam Matterface this morning on the All Access podcast, and Henry was a bit like, he could have been a Spurs legend, and he's not sure if he'd get as much game time at Arsenal. I actually think he will. I think he's that good a player. And I think Arsenal drew far too many games last season, and against teams that sort of dropped deep. They lost that bit of creativity, didn't they, in the last campaign? And I feel that he will give it. I think he's a wonderful signing.
He could be a game-changing signing for Arsenal. Arsenal fans, we're going to come to you later this hour. Does this mean no more excuses for Mikel Arteta? Spurs fans, we want to know how you're feeling in terms of your squad. Is it going to be able to compete on four fronts? Of course, you've qualified for the Champions League. And we want to start with you, Palace fans. I'm sure you're on your way to the game, or you're settling down to watch it from home. What does Eberechi Eze mean to you, and what will his departure mean for the club? All of that this hour here on talkSPORT. The number to call, 03717 223344. You can also drop us a text on 81089. So before we get into that in more detail, let's get across to Selhurst Park. Palace, of course, in action in their Conference League qualifier against Fredrikstad of Norway. We know Eze isn't in the squad for the game ahead of that impending move to Arsenal. But let's get a recap of the team news for an 8 p.m. kickoff with talkSPORT's Ian Abrahams.
Yeah, no Eberechi Eze, who's played his last game for the club, you would think, but still plenty for Oliver Glasner to pick, and he has stayed true to his word yesterday. His captain, Mark Gahey, despite being linked with a move to Liverpool, starts here tonight. Dean Henderson's in goal. Back three is Lerma, Lacroix and Gahey. Then reading from right to left in midfield, Munoz, Wharton, Hughes, and the new man, Borna Sosa, signed from Ajax in the summer, Ismail Assar and Justin Devaney behind John Philippe Mateta. And from that starting 11, apart from Gahey, who's been linked with Liverpool, you'd have to think that Adam Wharton's who is attracting a lot of attention, and possibly even Jean-Philippe Mateta. I mean, you have to look at this Palace team and think if Glasner can keep them all together this season, it would be something of a miracle. It's Palace's first game in a major European competition. They did once play in the Intertoto Cup, for what it's worth, but this is their first bow in the Conference League, and they should be massive favourites to win here tonight, Hugh.
Ian, thank you very much. Stay there. We'll be back to Selhurst Park in a moment. Scott, we want to talk about
proper competition, by the way, the Intertoto.
You played it. The reason we're talking about Eze is because Arsenal swooped in to conclude that deal of around £60 million plus add-ons for the Palace forward after he originally looked to be heading across North London after agreeing terms with Spurs. Now, after Kai Havertz suffered an injury, ruling him out for an indefinite period, Mikel Arteta jumped in to hijack the move, and we will now see Eze sign for the Premier League title contenders. But here's a reminder of how that transfer developed on talkSPORT.
Here is Eze, edge of the area, right-footed shot, slams it in!
This is when you go and make a statement and go and get Eze.
Certainly
we're going to be keeping tabs on Eze and a potential move to Tottenham.
I think he should go to Spurs if he leaves the great Crystal Palace.
Utter meltdown in North London, where after weeks of work, Spurs' dream signing was snatched away from them in moments.
Arsenal make a move for Eberechi Eze, and the 27-year-old wants to join them.
Is a needle mover. It moves the point of Arsenal. It moves who they are. I think it makes them far more likely to win the league.
Havertz gets injured. Arsenal decide to launch Move Hijacked.
It's the same story over and over and over again.
Ball just can't seem to get anything big over the line.
Deal agreed in principle, medical scheduled.
Eze is going to pick Arsenal, and Tottenham are now set dramatically to miss out.
Spurs have officially pulled out the race. They've waved the white handkerchief.
I think it's a disastrous day for Tottenham Hotspur.
And the reaction from Jamie O'Hara so far has not disappointed.
Pay the money and get the player over the line.
You're Newcastle of the South, Joe.
Madison's done his ACL. Like, we needed Eze. We needed him. And it's an absolute joke that we are going to lose him out to Arsenal, of all teams.
Well, it is going to be North London for Eberechi Eze, but it's going to be the red half.
Had to use the dump button for James, didn't he? James absolutely had him on toast.
Just Jason in the background going, Newcastle of the South. Just got me there. He loves to stick an oar in and just wind up Jamie as much as he can. The gentleman will be back, by the way, from 10 o'clock this evening. I'm sure Jamie's mood will be very similar, to be perfectly honest. We'll bring back Ian Abrahams, who's inside Selhurst Park as well for this conversation, because I wanted to quickly start the show. You know, so many talking about what it means for Spurs and Arsenal. But, Scott, what does this move mean for Crystal Palace? They would have seen it coming, I'm sure, from a long, long way. But it does take the heart out of their attack, really, doesn't it?
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. You know, the young lad, Justin Devaney, is going to be playing tonight. And it's a great opportunity for him. But, you know, Steve Parish is up there with Daniel Levy in terms of negotiating, trying to get the best possible deals, although I've just criticised Levy, and I think rightly so. So he would have known that they probably would have lost him and possibly even Mark Guehi in this particular window. So I'd be really interested to see what happens for Palace now. Now they've got that money, who are they going to bring in? I think if they don't bring in and just hope that someone steps up, I think Palace are going to struggle. I mean, yes, they're in the Europa Conference League. I mean, I followed Chelsea last season and it literally was a second 11, and we know that Chelsea are on a different level to Palace. But still, a lot of these players are going to be playing Thursday, Sunday, and that's going to take a bit out of them. So there's no doubt about it that money needs to be spent. He's going to be a big blow, but it's understandable. And I think the Palace fans, and the way he's dealt with it as well, is a perfect example to certain other footballers about actually you can do it with dignity and a bit of class. So well done to him.
We'll talk about getting your way out of a football club a little bit later on as well. Ian, I don't know what the conversation's been like for you in and around the club this evening. Maybe you've had the chance to speak to some fans, maybe some employees of Palace, around this Eberechi Eze move and how down people are feeling about it. You know, they would have expected more getting into Europe. They've had the blow, of course, of missing out on the Europa League itself. They're now down in the Conference League. We know about the court case and going to the Court of Arbitration for Sport. Now they lose, you know, their diamond in the team, if you like. Has that changed the mood at all?
I don't think so. I think that every Palace fan is looking forward to it. I spoke to a few as I walked in about, obviously, Eze leaving and not being in the team tonight. And I think they were quite, you know, okay with it, really. I mean, you know, like you say, it's not like he's thrown his toys out the pram. It's not like he didn't play in the Charity Shield and he didn't play last week at Chelsea, and he would have played here tonight had things not escalated the way they did last night. Oliver Glasner said yesterday, I was at the press conference, sat right in front of him. He said Mark Guehi and Eberechi Eze will play unless anything happens. Well, something did happen last night, so, you know, Eze isn't playing, but Guehi is. The one thing I would say, and maybe take a little bit of issue with what Scott said there, is that, and I'm very much a glass half full man at the moment on this, is that 12 months ago, rewind 12 months, and Michael Elise left for Bayern Munich for similar kinds of money. And everyone was going, oh, you know, how on earth are they going to replace Michael Elise? He had a fantastic end to the season. They only went and won the FA Cup. So I'm not saying that they're going to go and win a trophy this season, although I have to say, if they apply their minds, this competition is eminently winnable for any Premier League side, and I'll throw Palace in there for that one. And Oliver Glasner has won in Europe before with Eintracht Frankfurt in a harder competition, the Europa League. But you're right, they do. This squad needs fattening up. There's only 17, 18, 19 fit players at the moment on the roster, and whilst it's not impossible to play twice a week for a footballer, it's not desirable to always play twice a week for a top class footballer. The one thing I would say is that Glasner is got one more year in his contract. This is his final season unless he signs a new deal. That for me puts him right in the boss seat here. Okay, Eze's gone. What's happening with the money? Am I going to be able to spend this money within the next 10 days? Can I bring in who I want? Oh, by the way, don't forget, you've still got to talk to me about my contract. I'm sure he's more than happy here, but I'm sure there's a lot of clubs that would think, you know what, if he isn't happy here, then he's only got one more year before he walks away for nothing as well. So Palace have to make sure they keep their manager sweet.
That's a key point, Scott. They do have to do that. If they want Oliver Glasner to lead them in the future, and I'm sure they will, given what he's done for the club so far, they need to kind of give a statement of intent to him about where they want Palace to be.
Yeah, but he said this before as they went. He said this at the end of last season. He said it when they won the FA Cup. If we're going to crack on and kick on, then we need to get this squad even better. So I appreciate what the Moose is saying, but you can't keep on selling your best players then expect to go forward all the time. It doesn't happen. Sarr's done really well since he's come in. Do we really believe that Devaney and Sarr is going to be like a Sarr and Eze for this coming season? And look, I go back to...
If they reinvest this money...
They have to.
And that's what they have to do. They have to go out there now and get credible, I think, experienced Premier League players that can deliver at this level, because Eze is a player that delivers at this level. They need at least one. Who knows if Gay leaves? Who knows if Mateta leaves? That's the heart and soul out of their team.
Yeah, look, let's just say that Gay is going to stay and just concentrate on Eze. You can't replace him like for like, so you need at the very least two players to try and just again, and I know what Moose is saying, and I agree with him, and this is the easiest league. Any Premier League side that's in the Europa Conference League should be thinking we can win this. So there's a great opportunity for Crystal Palace here, despite what happened with them being demoted to the Europa League. That's the way I would look at it anyway. But if they are going to do it, the travelling from Europe, I don't think people quite realise it does take it out of you, because you don't sleep well, then you almost bit of chasing for the next particular game, and suddenly you're up against a Liverpool away or Manchester United or Manchester City, and then you've got to go again. So to produce the same results while still managing games in Europe is not an easy thing to do, not for a club like Crystal Palace.
We shall see if they can push this team forward despite losing the great talent that is Eberechi Eze, who looks like he's on his way to Arsenal. We're going to be talking about him this hour and what that move means for both sides of North London, the lack of a signing for Spurs and his name on the dotted line for Arsenal. If you've got a view on it, 03717 22 3344. We'll get the latest odds as well. You're listening to the Transfer Insiders on talkSPORT with Labrix. It's 18+. Thank you, by the way, to Moose. BeGambleAware.org. You're listening to Transfer Insiders here on talkSPORT. I am Hugh Woozencroft alongside the former Chelsea defender Scott Minto. We'll be talking Eberechi Eze and whether he's made the right decision to move to Arsenal ahead of Spurs this hour. If you've got a view on it, 03717 223344. I'll ask you if Mikel Arteta has no more excuses. Will Eze be the final piece of the puzzle? And Spurs fans, are you lightweight going into this season with the current squad you have, trying to fight on all four fronts? If you want to get involved in the conversation, the number to call is 03717 223344. Before we get back to those transfers, let's get an odds update on talkSPORT, all thanks to Ladbrokes.
Odds update on talkSPORT with Ladbrokes. You build it, we give you a totally free bet this week and a big boost every day. That's Ladisfaction. 18 plus gambleaware.org.
I'm delighted to say Alex Apati joins us from Ladbrokes. Let's look ahead to the game at Selhurst Park tonight. Crystal Palace against Fredrikstad in Conference League qualifying. And surely this is a case of how many?
Yeah, good evening, gents. Palace massive favourites here. They're 1-7. I don't think I could tell you the last time Palace were that short to beat anyone, but I think it's their first taste of European football since the Intertoto Cup, which, Scott, I think you know about. July
big competition, mate.
Not every player gets to play in an Intertoto. You've got to savour those special European nights.
We
exactly.
won it. Yeah.
Exactly. It was July 1998. It was a month after Eberechi Eze had just been born. He's obviously not in the goal scorer betting tonight, but he might be at the Emirates on Saturday. Fredrikstad, winners of last year's Norwegian Cup, they missed out on the Europa League. Have it all to do if they're to even qualify for the Conference League proper. They're 16-1 to win tonight and 14-1 to qualify. Palace aren't messing around either, are they? Strong lineup. Jean-Philippe Mateta is 5-2 to open the scoring. Ismail Assar is around evens for a goal at any time. It's such a strong lineup. Even despite the Eze news, I think there's still so much Palace have got to be positive about this year. They're 6-1 to win this competition. I think best bets here tonight, Palace to win both halves is even money, and Palace to win by 3 or more goals is around evens. I think it should be a comfortable night at Selhurst Park as they prepare for life after Eze.
Two of Scott's former teams meet tomorrow. It's live and exclusive here on talkSPORT. West Ham hosting Chelsea. Of course, the Hammers beaten 3-0 by newly promoted Sunderland on the opening day.
Yeah, Scott, you getting splinters this weekend?
Absolutely, mate. Absolutely. Score draw.
Yeah, it's already worrying times for West Ham. To be fair, they're currently 11-4 to go down. So they're more likely to be relegated than they are to win tomorrow night. They're just over 3-1 to beat Chelsea at home. Chelsea 8-13. They've won their last 3 against West Ham, scored 10 in that time. They would have been disappointed, I'm sure, to have dropped points on Sunday, but 19 shots in that game they managed against Crystal Palace, just 3 on target. They would need to be more clinical, but you will expect them to have just as many chances tomorrow night. So tough to pick a first scorer with about 40 players to choose from for Chelsea, but João Pedro and Cole Palmer are 9-2 joint favourites. Palmer, I was told, hasn't scored an open play goal in the league since January, which is insane. Bets elsewhere. Mark Cucurella is someone who was involved in quite a lot going forward against Palace. I think it'll be more of the same here. He's 3-1 for 2 or more shots tomorrow night. Don't even have to be on target. Fire them anywhere. It did land in the last game, so I think 3-1 is a good bet. As for a score, though, I'm not going to go score draw. I'll go 2-1 Chelsea win. That's a 7-1 shot.
5 Premier League games on Saturday for us. Where do you see the value elsewhere?
Interesting one. I think Spurs double chance, so to win or draw at City isn't a bad shout. It's just under 2-1. A little bit of a bogey team, aren't they, for City? I think City have only won 2 of their last 6 at home against Tottenham. Spurs won this one 4-0 last year. I think it's City's worst home defeat in 22 years. Both teams got off to a great start last weekend, so something's got to give here. And I wouldn't be surprised to see Spurs nick a result of some sort. Sunderland, I think, are a great price, just over 2-1 to beat Burnley. Again, 2 completely different opening weekends. So Sunderland going into this one on a pretty big high. A lot of people fancy them to go well this season and maybe avoid the drop. And if they are to do that, then these are the games they have to be winning, not just settling for a point. So 9-4 is a great price for the visitors. And then in the Arsenal Leeds game, just quickly, no Eze mentions yet, but Victor Gyökeres to score 2 or more goals is just shy of 4-1. I think Kai Havertz's injury will mean that Gyökeres will likely get more than the hour that he got at Old Trafford. First home game of the season, Arsenal huge favourites to win. I think he might calm a few nerves around the Emirates among fans with a couple of goals on Saturday night.
Okay, Alex, thank you very much indeed. That's Alex Apati. And a look at the latest odds with Ladbrokes. It's 18 plus, of course, and make sure you check out begambleaware.org.
Odds update on talkSPORT with Ladbrokes. You build it, we give you a totally free bet this week and a big boost every day. That's Ladisfaction. 18 plus, gambleaware.org.
So we'll be talking to both halves of North London this hour. Has Mikel Arteta got any excuses left after he's going to sign Eberechi Eze? Is that the final piece of the puzzle? And Spurs fans, is your squad light going into this season? Champions League, fighting on all fronts. Do you have enough quality in your squad to make challenges in all of those competitions? 03717 22 3344. Before we get into it next, just very quickly on Eberechi Eze choosing Arsenal. Right choice for you?
I think you have to be a massive Spurs fan to choose Spurs over Arsenal. I think if you're not, even, and I forget the fact that he is an Arsenal fan, I'm sorry, it's every day of the week. And again, it was interesting, what Henry was saying this morning, had a chance to be in a Spurs legend, and I'm sure, and you can't say a big fish in a small pond, because Spurs is a massive club, and it's desperate, the fan base, desperate to try and get back up to the top table. But how many seasons are they going to be in the Champions League after this year? For me, this is, at this moment in time, a one-off. I don't see them finishing in the top five, especially when they're combining Premier League and Champions League, and we talk about the squad, and we can go in depth more about that a little bit later. But Arsenal are there year in, year out, and now they're going for it. And really, Arteta hasn't got any excuses. He's got everything that he's asked for. Players, people. If you look at the bench at the weekend, Havertz, Lewis Skelly, Madueke, Marino, just fantastic amount of players. All the way down, they look like their first choice. And Wherry's, Timber, Trossard, obviously Havertz is injured now. But with Eze coming in, this is a team that's going to be fighting for the major trophies for a good few years now. So I'm sorry, it's Arsenal all day long.
Spurs fans, what do you make of that? Scott Minto says, no brainer, had to be choosing Arsenal over your team.
But it shouldn't have been an option, Hugh. That's my point. It should have been sorted before for Spurs.
We're going to get into it. Yeah, you're not happy with Daniel Levy. By the way, remember, West Ham, Chelsea live and exclusive here on talkSPORT tomorrow night. We'll also be looking ahead a little bit later on, but we'll also have live and exclusive EFL football on talkSPORT 2 tomorrow evening as Derby host Bristol City. Game day live, Saturday 12:30, Manchester City against Tottenham Hotspur. A big game for the Spurs players after that opening win against Burnley. We'll have Charlton against Leicester in the Championship over on talkSPORT 2 Saturday lunchtime. Of course, Adrian will take you around the grounds at 2:30 with all the goals as they go in, including Brentford against Villa, Burnley against Sunderland, Bournemouth against Wolves as well. 3 o'clock over on talkSPORT 2 will be Wrexham against Sheffield Wednesday. And on Sunday, we will have Game Day Live with Sam Matterface, Perry Groves and Charlie Adam as well. All the goals as they go in, including Fulham against Manchester United, Everton, Brighton, Palace against Forest as well. Monday night, we conclude with Newcastle against Liverpool. That is live and exclusive to national radio right here on talkSPORT. But next up, we will be talking Spurs after they miss out on another one. Where does it leave them? 03717 22 3344.
Well, Arsenal fans, you might be licking your lips and rubbing your hands right now, but signing Eberechi Eze may bring unexpected consequences for Mikel Arteta, because if Arsenal do get this deal through, Simon Jordan has pointed out the Gunners will be running out of reasons not to win the league.
It brings up the expiration date of Mikel Arteta, because he's going to have nowhere to turn. If he gets Eze and he's got Zubamendi and he's got a centre forward, what will be the excuse if Arsenal end the season with very little more than a League Cup?
Whatever happened behind the scenes, Glenn Hoddle's told us losing out on Eze is no doubt a complete disaster for Spurs.
Because it's exactly what we need. I think with Maddison getting injured, that creativity that Eze certainly brings is a natural footballer.
Elsewhere, Enzo Maresca says striker Nicholas Jackson will be left out the Chelsea squad to face West Ham tomorrow, despite being back from suspension.
He is available, but he's not going to be part of the squad because we have two strikers, we have two players in that position, and also something can happen before the window transfer close.
Jackson's expected to leave Chelsea after Maresca added Liam Delap and João Pedro this summer, and Kunku won't be involved either. Remember, West Ham versus Chelsea is live on talkSPORT tomorrow evening. And in transfers, Leeds have confirmed the signing of Noah Okafor from AC Milan. He joins in a deal worth 18 million quid. All your latest is at talksport.com.
You're listening to Transfer Insiders on talkSPORT. Hugh Woozencroft and the former Chelsea defender Scott Minto, FA Cup winner no less. Scott Minto is alongside me this evening. If you've got a view on Arsenal or Spurs when it comes to Eberechi Eze, give us a call, 03717 223344. Let's get stuck into it finally when it comes to these two North London clubs. Should we start with Spurs or Arsenal?
Up to you, mate. Where do you want to go with it?
Let's start with Spurs, shall we?
Okay.
I'm disappointed in Tottenham, I do have to say, not just over this deal, but over their dealings this summer. I, as a Manchester United fan, saw that Europa League final against Spurs as the winner being able to supercharge their club, to galvanise their team. All right, in the Champions League and clearly not deserving. They were 17th. Man United finished 15th last season. Whoever won that was getting the biggest cheat code in football history, probably. And you had to use it. It seems like Manchester United, having not won that game, have done better this window and strengthened their team and managed to supercharge it in a way that Spurs haven't managed to. This was your gateway. This was your window. This was your opportunity. Now, that window hasn't shut yet, so I don't want to hammer Spurs too much. But so far, I'm disappointed in the work that they've done in the window. And I know they've missed out on a couple of players. They might go back for Savinho at Manchester City. They obviously missed out on Morgan Gibbs-White. They've missed out on Eberechi Eze here. But all that talk from Daniel Levy, the interviews that he did, he wanted to bask in the sunlight and adulation of winning the Europa League, to come out and say things like, we want to win a Premier League title. We obviously want to win one day a Champions League final. I get it. Any owner can say that. Any chairman can say that about their football club. But it feels like currently Spurs are missing a great opportunity here. You're in the Champions League. It was a chance to get in and really strengthen that squad with players who are desperate to play Champions League football. And at the moment, they haven't been able to do that. I don't know why that is. Maybe it all boils down to money. I'm not sure. But I think they should have done most of their work early in the window, and they'd be in a very different position now.
Yeah, and look, Daniel Levy is an incredible businessman. What he's done with that stadium, amazing training ground. But now it's time to step up on the playing side. And for a few years now, they've spent money on transfer fees, but not on wages. What does that tell you? They've bought more young potential talent, not ready-made, not ready to actually go in there on the top four on a regular basis. I think you're absolutely spot on. It was a cheat code, wasn't it? For either of those two sides who was ever going to win the Europa League final. okay, now you win the Champions League. What are you going to do? You can attract the top players. Look, Kudus, I think, is a good signing. I was disappointed with him at West Ham last season, but we've already seen the talent he can be when he's fully motivated. I think Paulinho on loan is a really good signing. I don't think he really stood a chance at Bayern Munich once Thomas Tuchel went. And Joshua Kimmich was put into midfield and he had injuries. He was ill a few times during the season as well. But if you look at the stats of 2 seasons ago, so it's only really just over a year ago as well, he was right up there with one of the best central midfielders in the Premier League. So I think that's a really good signing. To get Romero to sign a new contract. I also think getting the manager in. I'm so impressed with Thomas Frank. And again, when I was working on the EFL on a regular basis, his Brentford side with the BMW up front were dominating games. What did he do when they went up? Obviously, he went long. He went more set pieces, long throws. And then it was 5 at the back against pretty much everybody. Then 5 at the back against the big boys and 4 at the back against the smaller boys. My point is he was adaptable. We saw against PSG, 5 at the back. Against Burnley, 4 at the back and scoring an unbelievable goal. They'll go 5 at the back for sure with Manchester City. So they've got a really good, adaptable, clever, football intelligent manager. But he needs the tools. Yeah. And look, when you think about, that Son had gone, Maddison and Kulusevski injured, and that's been for some time now. Morgan Gibbs-White missed out on him. Why didn't they go for Jack Grealish? But Jack Grealish is gone. Then you have to get Eberechi Eze. You have to get him. Yeah. It's as simple as that. And Arsenal weren't in the game. Yes, they were rumoured to maybe going in a few weeks ago, but it wasn't until the Havertz injury. And it's interesting they haven't come out and said how long he's out for. That tells me that's a pretty serious injury. Yeah. If you're going to go out and spend 65, 70 million pounds, then you genuinely think this guy's going to be out for some time. The deal should have been done beforehand, whether you meet the clause or agree to it. Apparently behind the scenes that it was already agreed with Eze and his personal terms. Get the deal done. And if they'd have had him, then suddenly I think he's that good that not only would they, I believe, have got through to at least the round of 16 of the Champions League, but I think they would have had a 20-25% chance of finishing 5th and what would probably, but not definitely, be another Champions League place.
Yeah. I think now, I don't know how you feel about it, but I think Spurs are still unlikely to qualify for the Champions League through a league position unless they add some real quality. And listen, I like Kudus and I like Paulinho. I don't think they move the needle drastically for Tottenham Hotspur. I expected them to improve, obviously. Thomas Frank, as you mentioned, and I also never felt that they were 17th. They obviously weren't a 17th place side in the Premier League based on quality. So I expected a big improvement. I wasn't one thinking that we're going to finish top 6 in the Premier League. And I still truly don't believe that, because I think there are some very good clubs who have been ahead of them for the last couple of years in Newcastle, Aston Villa, who don't want it. I know they haven't been able to do much in the market either, but clearly don't want to give up those positions and have been very strong with their managers, very talented as well, of course. So what is going to move the needle for Tottenham Hotspur in the league? I think they have to go out and get some real players. Now, the intent to get Eze means that there's money there, and it means that they're finally happy to not sign a teenager on just potential. Yeah. They can go and get someone who's proven in the league and they're prepared to pay the money.
27.
But again, off the back of missing out on Eze, today they're being linked with a youngster, a teenager, who's playing at Monaco at the moment, at Kliush, who's a very talented player, I get it. But again, it's someone who's unproven in this league, who maybe is not guaranteed. And I wonder how they can move drastically between one and the other. If there's £70 million there to go and get a player who's doing it in the Premier League right now, okay, there might not be as many players as good as Eze, but there's going to be someone that you can go and spend that money on who can deliver. Yeah,
and again, it's about that sort of intent that we're not just buying youth and potential and we're going down that route. Yeah, I can turn around and say, well, look how much money we've spent. Yeah, but what type of player have you got? Have you got one that's Premier League ready? Have you got one that's Champions League ready? Have you got one that's able, from a physical point of view, to combine the two?
Oh, by the way, just on the defence, Romero's missed parts of every season pretty much. He's played for Spurs. Van der Ven, we know, he's had problems with his hamstrings. You've got Kevin Danso and Dragoshin. They've signed a couple of centre-backs during this window. One's 18, one's 20. Pure potential. I just don't see Tottenham grasping this opportunity to get themselves in the Champions League again for next season with both hands. I don't know why they're not, but they can still do it before the end of the window, and they need to.
There's still time, and while we're sort of a lot of people, and I think rightly so, having a go at the club for not getting the deal done, there is still time to do it. But once we get to September the 1st, let's have a look.
Yeah.
And if they haven't done it, as you say, they've already had the cheat code of well, look where we are. We were the worst of the rest. Those three were always going to go down, and suddenly Spurs were the worst of the rest. Now you've changed your manager, and I believe they've got a very good manager who's wanting to kick on with the club. Yeah. But I go back to he needs the tools, and we'll have to wait and see whether the style. We know that Romero was getting injured. We know that Van de Ven was getting injured. We know that a lot of the players were getting injured, and we all put that on Ange's philosophy and his style. Well, if it's happening with Thomas Frank as well, then even more so, they need strength in depth. And I think people quite appreciate, you look at Newcastle a couple of years ago, and Villa very nearly did it actually last season after playing in the Champions League. But if you look at their results after a Champions League game, generally speaking, they were losing or certainly not winning. It's very difficult to combine the two from a mental, psychological and physical. To combine those two, if you haven't got strength in depth, then Spurs will struggle this season. When I say struggle, they're not going to... He's good enough, Frank, to make sure they finish top half, but they need to finish at the very least a European space, and he needs players to do that.
I'll stress this. At the moment, Spurs are reminding me of when Luton got promoted to the Premier League. And it was just like, we've got there, we weren't expecting it. It's fantastic for the club. We're going to bring the money in, but we're not going to do much else with it. That's how it feels.
Well, you know what happened to Luton after that, didn't you?
But for me, Spurs have had this kind of season as if they finished 6th or 7th last year. This is not, we're in the Champions League and we're going to try and do something special when we're pushing the club forward. For me, it just doesn't feel like they're taking that next step. I want to ask you very quickly about Arsenal. Okay. Mikel Arteta. No more excuses now if he signs Eze?
No more excuses, but I still believe that it's not a question of, look, if they finish 3rd and 10 points off the Premier League winners, then yeah, maybe it's a question of, look, I'm sorry, I don't see how you're gonna take this club on. We mustn't forget where he took over, and now this is the first season. I'm sure for a couple of seasons now, he's wanting the board to have gone out and bought that big striker, and they haven't done it. I'm sure that was the case. Now he's got it. And not only that, he's brought in others as well. The strength in depth. I just mentioned about the bench. There's not one player that you would say he's not quite ready. Even when Yeri, the age he's at, he's a first teamer now. He's considered to be a first teamer. That bench is as strong as any bench in the Premier League. So for me, he's got everything he wants. He's got the striker. I don't believe that Gyökeres had a poorer game as a lot of people were saying. I saw him make the runs. He wasn't played in. He's not 100% fit. He hasn't had a full pre-season. And once, the likes of Eze as well, he might have the relationship that he had with Mateta. He'll see those runs and he'll put him in. And I believe he'll score 15 to 20 goals this season for sure.
Can they win the league?
I predicted they will win the league in the All Access podcast.
You haven't changed that?
Even more so now that Eze's there. Look, I think it's difficult to do that because you've got Liverpool, who were the obvious ones. They were good. And in a way, it looks like they've got even better. And if they get Isak, then you could turn around and say on paper they're much better. But last season was more or less the same group of players. This season, even though on paper it looks like they've improved, there's a transition there.
There is, yeah.
And, everyone's got to get used to playing with each other, and perhaps a slightly different style as well, with Wirtz coming in and the 4-2-3-1.
Might be five new starters in probably Liverpool's best 11 out of their outfield players.
Exactly.
So half your outfield changing, so
exactly.
We'll wait and see on that. They scored 4 in the opening game, so, they look pretty good. But
you look at City, I think everyone knows what I think about Pep Guardiola. I think he's one of the very, very, very greatest. I don't want to say the greatest because it's all subjective, but what he's done in terms of what he's won, but also how everybody's tried to copy him. It's almost like the gospel of Pep Guardiola there. Even, not just other Premier League managers, but League One managers have tried to go. It's like, your players aren't good enough to do that. Let him show exactly with great football, but still win the trophies. But I did the Juventus game for talkSPORT in the Club World Cup, and I went big and I said they're back. And then what happened? The very next game they lost to Al Hilal and looked vulnerable in the same way they looked vulnerable last season.
Yeah.
So look, they look brilliant against Wolves. With the greatest respect, Wolves, I think if they finish 17th, have had a good season. So I'll watch out for them. But it's a 3.5 horse race.
We're going to find out where Manchester City and Spurs are this Saturday lunchtime here on talkSPORT. Remember that game live and exclusive to national radio on talkSPORT. Spurs travelling to Manchester City. I wonder, Spurs fans, do you think your squad is strong enough right now to compete? Give us a call, 03717 223344. And Arsenal fans, no more excuses for Mikel Arteta. Let us know what you think on that. Remember, by the way, this Saturday, live on DAZN, unbeaten Jack Rafferty will defend his British and Commonwealth titles against dangerous southpaw Mark Chamberlain in a domestic showdown. You can sign up now at dazn.com/boxing.
Boxing update on talkSPORT with DAZN, the global home of boxing. Buy now at dazn.com/boxing.
You're listening to Transfer Insiders on talkSPORT with Ladbrokes. It's 18+. BeGambleAware.org. Next up, we're going to get all the latest transfer news from talkSPORT's very own Ben Jacobs. Stay with us. You're listening to Transfer Insiders here on talkSPORT. I am Hugh Woozencroft. Alongside me, Chelsea FA Cup winner Scott Minto. And we're going to get more on the latest transfers. Right now on talkSPORT, we are joined by our very own Ben Jacobs, who's, of course, been very busy for the last few months. Ben, how are you?
Evening, guys. Just
Hi, Ben.
10 days to go.
Yeah, you must be waiting.
You must counting.
I was about to say.
You won't hear from me for the rest of the year.
Listen, let's talk about Eberechi Eze. He's, of course, making all the headlines at the moment. Arsenal fans waiting for the confirmation. Is that move on the verge?
Yeah, so Eberechi Eze will join Arsenal. It's just a case of doing the formalities. He's not in the squad tonight for the UEFA Conference League fixture. And that's no surprise because it's close to £68 million, the final package, 60 million and add-ons. But obviously the medical still needs to be done. And because Palace are in a match day cycle, including playing this evening, all of it will be formalised in the coming days. And my expectation is that Eze will be announced before Arsenal's game at the weekend. And it's a surprise, but also not a surprise in the sense that Arsenal were first to the table in late June. They then didn't move in July, even though they'd met with the player, because they wanted to give Ethan Nwaneri minutes at number 10. Spurs then were not going to move, but chose themselves to U-turn after missing out on Morgan Gibbs-White and James Maddison's ACL. That then resulted in Tottenham becoming front runners. It was a one-horse race for a while. Levy didn't get the deal done before the opening Premier League fixture of Palace against Chelsea, so Eze played. In hindsight, that was a critical error. And then as we broke on talkSPORT 48 hours ago, Spurs had the agreement in principle. And yesterday afternoon, Arsenal got their ducks in order and they got a deal. And as soon as it was 2 deals with Palace, Eze was always going to pick Arsenal. And as a consequence, he will be an Arsenal player in the coming days.
Just wanted to follow up on that and ask, do you expect Spurs to pivot now to someone else, and who that might be?
Yeah, Spurs want a number 9 and they still want a left winger because Son has departed, and they feel that they can add to Mattis Tell on that left-hand side. And there's a few options at the moment that they're seriously considering. The first is obviously Savinho. And if they can get a deal done, then they'd love to. I would say that he remains the number 1 choice. But you've got a very influential board member at Manchester City blocking that particular transfer. And that means that they may have to look at other targets on that left-hand side. You've got Tyler Dibbling, a long-standing Tottenham target, who might be a player they choose to bid for now, even though we've known throughout the window really more Everton trying to get that over the line. And there's a £50 million asking price. You've got Magnus Aklush, who is an attacking midfielder at Monaco, 23 years of age. Tottenham may choose to move in that direction. I think it's fair to say that Yohan Wissa will be given due consideration, but let's see whether Tottenham are put off by the asking price, as Newcastle have been so far, having had 3 bids rejected. So there are names that Tottenham are prepared to still do, but what's clear and disappointing, regardless of who they get, from Tottenham's perspective, is the number 1 choice was clearly Morgan Gibbs-White. They thought they got him. He signed a new deal at Forest. Then they felt that Eze was going to be a real coup and a name that would excite the fan base. They agreed a deal. He's off to Arsenal. So anyone else now that comes in, barring Savinho, will not be the top choice for Tottenham. But they are going to have to bring in, I think, multiple attackers between now and when the window shuts.
There are some rumours that Aston Villa's Morgan Rogers might be a player that Spurs move for. Could you see Villa doing business for a player like him?
Yeah, I think Morgan Rogers is a dream target for Tottenham, and if he becomes available for Chelsea and for several other clubs around the world, but it's a huge if, especially this late in the window. And I sense from Aston Villa's perspective that they're okay as far as PSR is concerned. Maybe not so healthy they can go out there and spend 70, 100 million in the last 10 days of the window, but I also think they're in a strong enough position for the last financial year that's closed and this current financial year that they won't need to cash in on Morgan Rogers. And even if they chose to, I think that the volume of interest and the price would not necessarily make Tottenham front runners. If anything, my read on the situation is everyone thinks Chelsea are going to do Alejandro Garnacho and Xavi Simons, and with quite some substance. But in a hypothetical where Rodgers became available, Aston Villa might take Nico Jackson, and I'd be staggered if Chelsea don't also ask the question about Morgan Rogers, because if anything, he's above Xavi Simons in their list, but he's a dream, whereas Xavi Simons might well prove to be the reality. So I think the door is probably shut on anybody getting Rodgers between now and the end of the window. But if he does become available, Spurs will not be the only club to explore that deal.
Which I suppose says everything about what we all think about Spurs at the moment. If they're in a race with anyone, they looks like they're going to be coming second. And I think that says a lot. I'd be absolutely flabbergasted if Villa let Morgan Rogers go, especially after Jacob Ramsey leaving as well. But you just never know. We shall see. Look, you mentioned the name there, Yohan Wissa. What's the latest?
Wissa wants Newcastle, simple as that. Brentford don't want to sell. They don't view Dango Ouattara as a replacement for Wissa. He's the replacement for Bryan Mbeumo. So another number 9 would have to come in and Brentford would have to cave. And we hear different narratives from different sources, and we have to be fair to all sides. The Wissa perspective is that there's a verbal pact in place allowing him to leave this summer, and the maximum number is 40 million. Newcastle bid that. It was their third offer. It was rejected, and quickly. So Wissa is disappointed. Brentford argue there was no verbal pact and there is no guarantee that he's going to leave. So it's a fascinating situation. Tottenham haven't entered that race yet. Let's see whether that changes in the coming days. But from Brentford's point of view, they're standing firm. Keith Andrews wants to keep Wissa. So let's see how it develops, because the player is really pushing. He doesn't want to play Premier League football for Brentford whilst the window is open. And this is because he's 28, nearly 29. It might be the only chance in his career to play Champions League football. So Wissa is still hoping Newcastle comes off, but at the moment, no breakthrough.
Okay, Ben Jacobs, thank you very much for being with us this evening on the Transfer Insiders. He's counting down the days. Not because he wants to tell you all about the transfers, but because he wants a good night's sleep, I think. But Ben, keep up the good work, my friend. We're going to have more in the next hour here on the Transfer Insiders. Of course, we'll talk more transfers, but we'll also look ahead to tomorrow night's action as West Ham host Chelsea. Hammers fans, what do you make of your club right now? What you need to do in the transfer market? Give us a call, 03717 223344.
As Lewis Hamilton, now at Ferrari, dares to dream of a record 8th F1 world title, the Tifosi will be hoping the Brits can bring glory back to Italy. To many, Ferrari and Formula One are inseparable. They're the only team in the sport today to have competed in the first World Championship in 1950, are the most successful team in history, and have built some absolutely gorgeous cars. Their first driver's title was won in 1952 by Alberto Ascari. Considered one of F1's most dominant and best-loved champions, he drove the iconic Ferrari 500 and defended his title the year after. It was Juan Manuel Fangio in his Ferrari 250 who secured the team's next driver's title in 1956. Remember, he was world champion 5 times with 4 different teams. Mike Hawthorne, Phil Hill and John Surtees also won titles for Ferrari in the 50s and 60s, and the cars back then were beautiful, and they even sounded great, didn't they? Anyway, Ferrari went 11 years without winning a title until Niki Lauda won in 1975 in the iconic 312T. Throughout much of the 80s and 90s, though, Ferrari looked like they'd never go all the way again. Le Professeur Alain Prost came pretty close in 1990, but lost out to his bitter rival and former teammate at McLaren, Ayrton Senna. It was only when John Todt recruited a swathe of staff from outside of Italy, including Michael Schumacher, that the glory days returned 21 years after their last driver's title. The turn of the century saw the prancing horse sprint to an unprecedented 5 consecutive championship doubles. And after Schumacher left, Kimi Räikkönen reclaimed the driver's title immediately. But despite employing 1,500 people, the Iceman remains the last Ferrari world champion. So, 16 constructors' titles, 7 more than McLaren, and 15 drivers' titles, 4 more than, again, McLaren. Ferrari are truly Formula One's top team. Forza Ferrari.
This is the Transfer Insiders on talkSPORT. I am Hugh Woozencroft alongside the former Chelsea and Benfica defender Scott Minto this hour. We'll be discussing Manchester United as they continue to suffer between the sticks. We'll talk some EFL with our expert and, of course, Leicester fan Jeff Peters. We'll get stuck into talkSPORT's Friday night commentary game as well, of course. West Ham hosting Chelsea in a London derby. And we want to hear from you. Give us a call, 03717 223344 for your thoughts on Spurs, Arsenal or West Ham. You're listening to Transfer Insiders on talkSPORT. At Crystal Palace just getting underway in their European game as well. Conference League qualifying, of course. No goals as yet in any of the matches. 17 minutes gone. Shelburne 0, Linfield 0. Goalless between Aberdeen and Steaua Bucharest as well. Hibernian in action tonight. Shamrock Rovers Palace. I'll keep you right up to date with all of those scores, including Lincoln Red Imps as well. Our friends in Gibraltar. We're keeping you up to date with them as well. But it's now time to look at the latest football action with Ladbrokes.
The big preview on talkSPORT with Ladbrokes. You build it. We give you a totally free bet this week and a big boost every day. That's Ladisfaction. 18 plus gambleaware.org.
And tomorrow night, live on talkSPORT, we are going to bring you a London derby, better known as the Scott Minto derby, between two sides who failed to win on the opening weekend as West Ham United take on Chelsea.
Welcome to a big London derby of East versus West.
Header by Bowen! Oh, what a goal! Squares it back to Palmer!
Chelsea, with the amount that they spent, that in itself brings obviously pressure on itself.
Finished at the Stadium late. Sunderland 3, West Ham 0.
It's a mess, West Ham. We don't actually know what Graham Potter is yet.
Potter, for me, he's got a lot of questions to answer.
West Ham is not a club that panics about its managers. We tend to stick with them and see it through.
Chelsea home, Forest away, Spurs at home, Palace at home, Everton away, Arsenal away. As a West Ham fan, you're looking at that this morning, how many points they're going to get?
Chelsea 0, Crystal Palace 0, no goals.
Are we seriously talking about a team that's just won the World Club Championship here, needing to spend to win the league? You know, I don't think so.
João Pedro with a great opportunity. Oh, what a dream first half. This is turning into for Chelsea.
I think there can be challenges this year.
Friday Night Football returns to the talkSPORT network.
And it should be a good one. I'll be with you for it tomorrow evening, live and exclusive action from the Premier League to get weekend number 2 underway. A London derby, a mouth-watering one, despite how West Ham played on the opening weekend, because I expect a reaction from West Ham United, and I'm sure all the Hammers fans going to London Stadium are expecting something big from their side after the disappointment of a 3-0 defeat to a newly promoted team in Sunderland at the Stadium of Light. Are you expecting that same sort of reaction? And does Graham Potter need it?
I am expecting a reaction, of course. I think the whole of the London Stadium will be doing that as well. I was actually at the London Stadium yesterday hosting an event for the Hammers Business Network, and I actually interviewed Graham.
Who started? Who's in the starting team?
Yeah, almost. It's the Graham Potter derby now, isn't it?
Yeah.
But an incredibly impressive guy. We were talking more about leadership, but I did sort of verge onto, you know, the players and the game itself at the weekend. He felt that the summer went really well pre-season. I think he's careful what he says. He knows how to manage up. He needs help, Hugh. Yeah. He needs help. That squad is not good enough at the moment, and I do worry for West Ham. You know, Chelsea, the way Chelsea are playing at the moment, and obviously they didn't beat Palace, but they had a lot of chances to go on and win the game. You could argue maybe Palace were unlucky with the goal that was disallowed, but Chelsea, we've seen, are good enough to beat anyone. You know, they did that against PSG. So if West Ham are to lose that one, and then they've got Wolves away in the League Cup, you never know what can happen there, and Forest away, and how well they've started as well. Yeah. They could go into the international break with 0 points. Now, I don't want to be negative, and I look at the team, and there's a lot of experience that's gone. You know, if you look at Cresswell, Soufal, Fabianski, Antonio, and then you can chuck in Danny Ings as well, mid to late 30s. You know, all of those. There's a lot of experience that's gone. So even though they weren't brilliant on the pitch, they're good characters off it. And that's what they need. I think everyone knows the midfield, there's not enough athleticism. There's not enough legs. You know, so I'm pretty sure that again, we talk about with other clubs in the last 10 days, what's going to happen. If this is the same squad once the window closes, then I do worry for West Ham.
Yeah, I tend to agree with you on that. There's a lack of dynamism, as you pointed out. There's a lack of youth in the team quite clearly as well. They need to address those two fairly significantly. But the thing about West Ham United is time. It was interesting to hear Karen Brady say we always support our managers, because she must have forgotten who Julian Lopetegui is. That's probably because he didn't let the door hit him on the way out. She forgot he was ever the manager.
But generally speaking, they're not sacking people, apart from what happened last year, which I think was quite obvious was a misfit with Lopetegui. I'm a Graham Potter fan. I liked what he did at Brighton. I don't think anyone would have stood a chance at Chelsea. The complete turnover of philosophy there from the ready-made world-class players, now go and win trophies, to actually youngsters. And it was just a complete turnaround. And for him, it was a very difficult time. And as we saw with Frank, when he came back as well, Frank Lampard, it was difficult for him there. And some of the things he was saying, you know, the players knew they were going or just weren't at it. Yeah. This is something that he hadn't seen before with Chelsea, certainly not within his time. But I look at what they've got, and they need Fulkrug and Wilson to be fit. Is Paquetá like a new signing because of what's happened off the field now? Is he going to show the form of 2 or 3 years ago? They rely so much on Jared Bowen. If he's injured, Hugh, I really do get worried for West Ham. And that's the problem, because you've got incredibly passionate fans, 60,000 of them who are going week in, week out. Now, that stadium, it's not a football stadium, but still, because they're so passionate, they can make it feel really intimidating. When I was at Upton Park, you know, players have said they used to hate going to Upton Park because of the fans and the way it was. But you look at it now, the fans can only do so much. Graham can only do so much. I was slightly disappointed. I thought he'd come in, and the fans were very kind of like, look, you've got the rest of the season. We're not going to be on top of you. But he didn't seem to improve things. So then you're expecting a good summer recruitment, and that's not happened. So these next 10 days, I think, are absolutely crucial for West Ham United Football Club.
Let's head to Selhurst Park to bring in our resident West Ham United fan, and that is Ian Abrahams. They need to do something in the window, Moose. You know, Graham Potter needs support. He's going to get a lot of criticism. He obviously hasn't moulded himself in terms of a relationship with the West Ham fans. I don't think many of them are desperate to give him time. He doesn't feel like one of their own, if you know what I mean. So he has to provide them with results and goals and performances. At the moment, he, like I say, needs help to do that.
Yeah, I'm not going to be an apologist for Graham Potter, but what I will say is that he is possibly the right man for West Ham, but he's in charge of completely the wrong squad. I mean, Scott said it before, you know, the squad is not good enough. It doesn't matter how you try and dress it up and how you want to mention that West Ham have got these players and those players. You know, you look through the squad and it just isn't good enough. They signed a goalkeeper from Leicester who made at least one, if not two errors last week. Kyle Walker-Peters was a free signing that should have been made, if at all, before Emerson was brought to the club. Now I don't understand that signing because he's not going to get into the team ahead of Wan-Bissaka, and he's not going to get in either ahead of Emerson or the other new signing that West Ham made this summer, El Hadji Malik Diouf. The rest of the money that was gained, pretty much gained from the Declan Rice deal, has just been completely squandered. Max Gilman has not been a success at the club, and bless him, he's so slow. Edson Alvarez is about to go because he's not getting enough time. Nair Figueira couldn't wait to get on loan last season. He's back now, but you know, what's his frame of mind? Don't even start me about Mavropanos because I really don't want to be rude about players on air. What I will say is there is real young talent. Ollie Scarl's got his chance last season. Freddie Potts has smashed it twice at Wickham and Portsmouth. You know, he should be starting in midfield. You've got George Earthy, coming back from injury after a great loan spell at Bristol City. And you've got Callum Marshall, Lewis Orford, also a midfield player, coming back. So that there are midfield options if West Ham want to actually employ them. But for me, the only two decent signings, or the signings that have worked at the club in the last few years, have been Souček, who's still there, and Jared Bowen. Yeah. The rest of the money that's been spent, and plenty has been spent, you know, 40, 50 million pounds at a time on players. I mean, Anderson, you know, I don't even know where he is now, probably playing back in Brazil. He was hopeless. You know, Hilaire has been great everywhere else he's played, bar West Ham. And this goes back donkey's years. You know, the signings of players has been appalling, and I don't think you can lay any of that at Graham Potter's door.
Let's hear from Graham Potter, who's been speaking ahead of the game with Chelsea, and actually says the profit and sustainability rules are restricting West Ham's ability to buy players.
Well, I think the profile is one that we think about privately, to be honest, because I think that helps us in the market. We have to try to find the right players always, as I repeat. It's about the right player, the right profile, the right person, always. And that isn't easy to do, especially when you've got restrictions you have because of PSR. Every club has. As I said last week, it's not like we can go for Isak. We have a certain market, and that's fine. So our job is to try to look for players that can improve us externally, and at the same time look for players and help the players we have here. Clearly we have to do that, and that's where my focus is on.
I mean, I like the diplomacy of it, but if he's struggling to find players that improve West Ham United, he's not very good at recruitment, because they're everywhere in this West Ham United team at the moment. You can look all over the Premier League at players who aren't even playing, and I reckon they'll improve West Ham United right now.
Yeah, the problem is that, you know, you look, we just talked about the sort of lack of legs, and maybe they'll get Mateus Fernandes, and we'll have to wait and see Ruben to do that. But even defensively, there were just two long crosses going into the box. You're playing three at the back. You've got three centre-halves. So there's leaky defence. You haven't got legs in midfield. And up front, you don't know who's going to be fit. You know, I think it's a big season. I do hope that Nicholas Füllkrug is fit, because I think if he can stay fit, I think he can do pretty good. I think he can get double figures in terms of goals. Jared Bowen can do the same as well. And I think it just needs a few others. I talked about Paquetá, and a couple of seasons ago, he played the pass for Jared to score the winning goal in Prague. And he's been brilliant. If they can get him back to the form that he was then I think West Ham can steer clear. It's just, you know,
that's where it is right now. It's just about survival. It's about staying up.
With this squad right now, absolutely. And I'm sure they know that. And Graham's very careful what they're saying. But if there are PSR issues, then they are struggling. They're going to have to maybe even sell again before buying. And I don't know where the club's going to going forward. And that's why, in terms of tomorrow night, first home game, you know, remember what happened last season against Chelsea as well, when Nicholas Jackson run riot? can't afford to do that again. It's really important that West Ham, even if they don't win, they don't lose, but put in a really good performance that the fans can get behind.
It's going to be live and exclusive here on talkSPORT tomorrow evening, so make sure you're with us for that one. Let's head very quickly to Selhurst Park to speak to Ian Abrahams once again. Palace are playing against Fredrikstad of Norway. It's a Conference League qualifier. How are they getting on?
Well, it's Palace 0, Fredrikstad 0. It's been all Palace pretty much. I mean, all the players been in the Fredrikstad half and most of it inside their penalty area. Having said that, their goalkeeper hasn't yet had a serious save to make. The fans are now getting behind the team, having stated that they're not the keenest on UEFA or the Nottingham Forest owner, Marinakis. Let's just leave it at that. But at the moment on the pitch, not really got going yet, Palace. Palace 0, Fredrikstad 0.
Expected maybe a little bit more from Palace this evening, but remember the news came a couple of hours before kickoff that Eberechi Eze wouldn't be playing.
Can't blame that.
And they, no, I'm just saying they maybe lack a bit of a spark in attack without him there. What, I can't.
Well,
is that not a fair comment?
No, absolutely with him. I thought you were going to sort of say, it's put a little bit of a downer on things.
No.
I think they knew it was going to happen.
Yeah. No, I just. Because obviously he was meant to be playing, right? Up until today, he was meant to be playing. I think maybe they just lack a little bit of spark in their attack, but hopefully it will come. That's all I'm saying.
I think over 2 legs, Palace should and will get through. Remember, Chelsea actually struggled in their qualifier last year in the Europa Conference League. They lost the away game, but it's not easy, and they've got to deal with a team that just happy to come for 0-0. But at the moment, all the possession. They could do with an Eberechi Eze, couldn't they, to open it up?
And of course, it's a very new feeling for Crystal Palace playing in Europe this evening, of course.
Well, the atmosphere must be great.
Yeah, it looks great. It's great to see them, and they looked up for it when they came out. The fans certainly did. The team now just needs to respond a little bit. So we'll be back at Selhurst Park very, very shortly. By the way, West Ham fans, give us a call. Let us know how you're feeling about Graham Potter. Do the club need to have some patience? Do you think it's going to work out, or are you losing faith? 03717 223344. That was the big preview. Thanks to Ladbrokes. It's 18+. BeGambleAware.org.
The big preview on talkSPORT with Ladbrokes. You build it, we give you a totally free bet this week and a big boost every day. That's Ladisfaction. 18+, gambleaware.org.
This is Transfer Insiders here on talkSPORT. I'm Hugh Woozencroft alongside Scott Minto. We'll be talking about Scott's other former club, Chelsea, next ahead of their game against the Hammers tomorrow night. Stay with us. I'm Hugh Woozencroft alongside the former Chelsea defender Scott Minto here on Transfer Insiders. Lots of anti-UEFA, anti-Evangelos Marinakis chants among the crowd at Selhurst Park tonight. The Moose told us a few moments ago, the Palace fans letting us know their frustrations, of course, about the fact they're even playing in the Conference League tonight when it really should have been a Europa League game instead. But there you go, they are where they are, still goalless against Fredrikstad in the first half. We'll be back there very shortly. Just looking at the other games so far. Aberdeen trail FCSB of Romania by a 1-0, 36 minutes played in that one. Shamrock Rovers of the Republic of Ireland trailing Santa Clara of Portugal by a 0-0. The other games involving British teams and Northern Irish teams currently goalless. Okay, let's talk Chelsea. Your former club, of course, going to West Ham United tomorrow, obviously. Champions of the world. They'll get to dine out on that for a few years. But it has increased the expectation coming into this season. They weren't great against Palace in the opening game. They played all right, but obviously didn't get the victory that they would have hoped for. When you consider their spending over the past couple of seasons, purely outgoings, have they given Enzo Maresca a squad that can challenge for the Premier League title?
I think they're getting close now. I've heard people say now they won the Club World Cup that actually Chelsea should be going for the title, and I get that from if you look at purely what they've spent. But actually, if you look at the type of player that they've profiled, it does take a little bit of time, and there's this constant turnover of players. I mentioned earlier about how Abramovich sacked managers on a regular basis, but he gave managers ready-made world-class players, and the new hierarchy haven't done that. But you look at it now, and they're not a million miles away from getting in there. They're still trying to get up, and I said last season that it's a different 11 in the Europa Conference League. They didn't even register certain players, Cole Palmer in particular, in the group stages because they didn't need to. They knew they'd get through. So it wasn't as if they were playing Wednesday, Saturday, and each game was full on. This season, it will be full on. Cole Palmer will be playing 2 games a week, full on. And I know people will probably say, so he should be able to. But I go back to how Newcastle, they struggled with it. Villa, they actually dealt with okay, but had to get players in January to go again. And their results after a Champions League game was very poor. So to ask Chelsea now to go on and win the Premier League title, I think is too much considering Manchester City, Liverpool, Arsenal, and where they are right now. So for me, if they were to finish 4th, go deep into the Champions League and maybe win a domestic cup, I think that would be brilliant. That wouldn't be standing still at all. That would be keeping the status quo while doing really well in the Champions League, and that's a very difficult thing to do. So in terms of the squad, I personally would like to keep Nicholas Jackson. It looks like he's off. He's not going to be involved tomorrow night. I always think when you've got one striker up front, you always need to think one person's going to be injured and then you need another option off the bench. So if we get rid of Nicholas Jackson, if Delap suddenly gets injured, then you're left with Joao Pedro. Last season, Nicholas Jackson got injured and Pedro Neto was playing up front.
Yeah. I get they've got 2 players to play through the middle in Pedro and Delap. I do find it strange that given they've got the Champions League that they would want to get rid of Nicholas Jackson. I don't think he was that bad. And it's weird to see so many fans kind of look down their noses at having Nicholas Jackson in their team because for a relatively inexperienced player in a league like this, I think he did fairly well. I get it, red cards and temperament and stuff like that. But in terms of talent, there's a lot of clubs that could do with a centre-forward like Nicholas Jackson.
Yeah.
I mean, he's got talent quite clearly. But the fact that Chelsea want to let him go surprises me. And it also points to one of the reasons why I don't think they will be title challengers. Because something about accounting is more important to Chelsea than football. I'm not going to say that I don't think they don't want to win stuff, but they're happy to have this constant churn of players, which clearly helps them balance the books on all the spending that they've been doing in recent years, which means that players like Nicholas Jackson are suddenly more available than they otherwise would have been. And if that keeps happening, you just don't get the rhythm to build your team and consistency into a team that's going to finish ahead of the likes of Liverpool and Arsenal and Manchester City in the race for a Premier League title. It just isn't being run that way. I've criticised other clubs in the past and said if you want to win the big things, I think you have to run your team in a certain way, top to bottom. Chelsea just aren't doing what they would need to do to win a title. If they said, we're going to get an experienced centre-half in, because that for me is one thing that this team misses, not just centre-backs in terms of depth, because I think they've got about 8 players, but a really experienced frontline, top-draw, central defender. They brought in Thiago Silva. I know it was a different era a few years back, and we saw the impact he had on the Chelsea team. If they had someone like that at the heart of their defence, I would probably be talking kind of differently about Chelsea. We know that a player like that doesn't fit in their recruitment model. So it's just not going to happen. And if it doesn't, I just don't see them, a goalkeeper, for example. They started the summer saying Robert Sanchez isn't going to be good enough. We want to go for Mike Maignan from AC Milan. I was like, wow, because he is, for me, he's probably a top 5 goalkeeper in the world. They didn't get him before the Club World Cup started. By the end of it, Robert Sanchez is our guy. We're not going to buy a new goalkeeper at all. Which for me, again, it's just like, if you truly want to win the Premier League, that is a position that for me still needs to be addressed. If Chelsea don't want to do that, I'm not going to say that they're not going to be a very good team in the Premier League, because I think they are, but they're not going to win the title. Obviously not.
No, I do agree with you there, Hugh. I've been critical of Robert Sanchez. Look, he had a great game in the final of the Club World Cup, but actually I also covered a lot of games with Chelsea for talkSPORT, and there was a couple of goals earlier on in the tournament where I don't feel he should have conceded. I thought he improved towards the end of last season, but ultimately I do agree he's not a Premier League winning goalkeeper, and that's what you need. They're spending all this money. It is interesting. Chelsea's net spend over the last 2 years is minus £90 million. That's turning a profit of £90 million over the last 2 seasons, despite spending nearly £500 million. And that's incredible. So the accountancy side is brilliant, but I couldn't agree with you more. It's about giving Maresca what he wants in terms of actually giving them the tools to gel together. And we know that obviously Levi Colwell's got injured. He's turned around, to be fair, and said he wants a centre-half, and he's now looks like he's not going to get that.
Well, let's hear from the Chelsea boss, Enzo Maresca, who's been talking about that exact topic. He has said it's unlikely Chelsea will sign another defender this summer, despite that apparent need.
I said, and I repeat again, probably I need to improve my English. We are looking for internal solution, and we see if something happen.
Very angry with the journalist once again, Enzo Maresca there. Was a smiley guy. Listen, I understand there is depth in terms of the number of players, but again, in terms of the quality that Chelsea need, I think that needs to be addressed. There are a number of players, decent players in the Chelsea squad who could play centre-back, but they've already started the season with youngsters. Josh Ajapong playing
big talent
in the first game. Big talent, and clearly can handle the Premier League. But again, I'm talking about getting to a Premier League title right now. He's a very, very young player. Wesley Fofana, much more experience on the bench. Looks like he's happy at Chelsea. But
on him, I don't think he is.
Well, apparently today he is. That's the word.
Oh, he's happy again now.
That's what's being reported.
Is that right? So has he got all his Chelsea stuff back on his Instagram now?
Well, I can't tell whether a player is happy or not in their job unless they've got mentions of their football club on their social media.
Mate, honestly. Right?
As soon as they're gone, that means they're unhappy.
I'm not condoning what Alexander Isak is doing in any way whatsoever. He's bang out of order, and his agent needs a word as well. But at least there's a reason for what he's doing, even if you don't agree with it. Where's Fofana? He's been injured for 3 years.
He's got a 7-year contract.
It's about 29 games he's played in 3 years. And suddenly he's fallen out with the manager and he's deleting his stuff on Instagram. Get your toys back in the pram, please.
I mean,
understand what you've done or what you haven't done at the club so far, where the club's spent the money, £70 million on him, and the wages he's earned in the last 3 years. Just do what the manager says. And actually, getting him fit could be that one.
Yeah.
Could be that. I mean, okay, he's not the sort of left-sided Levi Colwill, but I like Tosin as well. He is a leader, and he's one of those who he is older than your average person that they're buying at the moment. Chalobah, I like him a lot as well. And if you got Wes Fofana along with Achimpong, I think that's a decent enough. I think the owners can turn around and say you've got enough centre-halves to try and deal with that now. Fullbacks as well.
Can I just ask very quickly, if Chelsea don't sign another player, where do you think they'll finish?
No, I think they'll finish fourth.
Okay.
I think they'll finish fourth, whatever. I think the top four is almost pretty much... It's not done and dusted. Of course it's not. We've only got one game in. But I do feel the top three, it's a three-horse race. I think it's going to be really exciting to see what happens there. I think Chelsea are the next best by some. And then I think that fifth place is up for grabs. Yeah. I really do. But I still feel, even though they've got lots of numbers in terms of attacking midfielders, lots of numbers, I still feel in terms of pure quality, they probably need
another attacking player.
Need another attacking player.
My word, he's Chelsea through and through. They need
you've got Neto, Palmer, Gittins. Gittins, You know, he's only just signed. Estival's only an 18-year-old kid. What a talent, by the way. Yeah. But again, you can't necessarily rely on him to be able to deal with Premier League, Champions League all the way. Tyreek George is a youngster. Andre Santos is a youngster. Christopher Nkunku hasn't pulled up any trees, and he'll be leaving. And Mykhailo Mudryk isn't around at the moment. So in terms of, again, strength in depth, they probably do need another winger. It's crazy to say.
We'll see if Todd Bowley's listening, or Clear Lake Capital, and they can get some work done for you. Scott Minto, the voice of the former Chelsea defender there. West Ham versus Chelsea, live and exclusive here on talkSPORT tomorrow night, 7 p.m. For all of the build-up. But up next, we'll be looking ahead to the EFL weekend with talkSPORT's Jeff Peters. Stay put. You're listening to Transfer Insiders on talkSPORT. Hugh Woozencroft alongside former Chelsea and West Ham defender Scott Minto. We'll take your calls this hour, 03717 223344. West Ham fans on the line at the moment. We'll get to them shortly. We'll also be talking EFL with Jeff Peters in a moment. But first, let's head back to Selhurst Park. Crystal Palace taking on Fredrikstad in the Conference League playoff first leg with Ian Abrahams.
Less than 10 to the break. It's still Palace 0, Fredrikstad 0. And the amazing thing is that Palace seem to be taking this incredibly sloppily at the moment. There's certainly the way they're playing anyway, although Jean-Philippe Mateta whips the ball in. The goalkeeper manages to cut that out. 2 efforts from Wharton, 1 over and 1 straight at the goalkeeper. And also Souza, the new boy, signed in the summer from Ajax, from almost 30 yards out with the goalkeeper scrambling across his goal. Couldn't find the back of the net. By the way, Fredrikstad, in case you're wondering, founded by King Frederick II, but you probably knew that anyway. Approaching half-time, Palace 0, Fredrikstad 0.
I didn't know that, and you learn something new every day, so thank you very much, Moose. Just to let you know about the other games. In Europa League qualification, Aberdeen trail at home to FCSB of Romania, but they have had a man sent off in that game. Lincoln Reddings of Gibraltar trail Braga by 1-0 on 37 minutes. In the Conference League, it's half-time, Shelbourne 1. Linfield of Northern Ireland also down to 10 men, 0. Palace 0-0 with Fredrikstad, as we just mentioned. Hibernian of Scotland trail Legia Warsaw at home by 1-0. And Shamrock Rovers of the Republic of Ireland trail Santa Clara of Portugal 1-0 as well. I'll keep you right up to date with those scores throughout the evening. But let's get into all of the EFL action that's to come this weekend. Let's speak to our reporter, talkSPORT's very own Jeff Peters. Good evening.
A very good evening to you, chaps. Good to see you.
Jeff, good to see you, mate.
Good to see you. Lots for us to talk about. We're going to start, though, with our live game on talkSPORT 2 tomorrow night. Derby County hosting Bristol City. Bristol City trying to get to the top of the table if they can win this game. Derby without a win so far in all competitions under John Eustace this season. I think a lot more was expected for them, but they have been hit by some injury issues at the start of this campaign.
Yeah, I think we have to sort of preface it by saying, certainly in the Championship, obviously in League One and League Two, they've had 4 games. In the Championship, they've had 2 matches. So we've had 2 games plus a League Cup tie. So we are still at the very early part of the season where some teams have maybe just had a bit of fortune and their fans are thinking, oh, well, this is so much better than we expected. And some kind of going, oh, this is just a disaster 2 games in. Oh, I think this is going to be the worst season we've ever had. I think you have to try and keep a little bit of perspective about where we are at this stage of the season. So in terms of what Derby have done, they went to Stoke on the opening day and it was 1-1 going into stoppage time. Looked like Derby were going to kick off with a point. Then they conceded twice in stoppage time. And a real humdinger of a game against Coventry last time out where they fought back to lead 3-2 and eventually lost the game 5-3. And it was a very open game. Perhaps result could have gone either way, but Coventry are a lot more established at this level than Derby are. So I like John Eustace. I like the transfer business that he's done. I don't think they'll be anywhere near trouble this season. Obviously, he came in and kept them up. I think that they will be certainly further up the table. And as for Bristol City, let's not forget they were in the playoffs last year and they started the season with a fantastic win away at Sheffield United. They played some really good football. They've got 4 points on the board from 2 games. So when you look at it where they are in the table, you go, well, you'd fancy Bristol City in this. But I don't think it's as easy as that at this stage of the season. If Derby win, they're only a point behind them. So maybe there's not that much between them. Maybe Bristol City will win and they'll go top of the table heading into all Saturday's matches. But I think actually it's could well be one hell of a game to watch and listen to.
Obviously, Bristol City, had, as you say, had that great first game. And then the second game, they came up against the mighty Charlton, Jeff, and then couldn't score against them. So, you know, your team Leicester, my team Charlton. How do we see that one going? I'll be there for talkSPORT.
Yeah, 12:30. That's live on talkSPORT 2. I think Charlton they've kind of, I think, a little bit flown under the radar at the early part of this season in terms of the sides that were promoted from League One, because all the headlines and all the stories are about big spending Birmingham and big spending Wrexham and their owners and the stories, and they're both excellent, brilliant stories in their own right, absolutely. But Charlton have come up and kind of not too many people talking about them, and obviously they had a very good end to last season, trying to take momentum into the Championship. Your first game of the campaign and you score I think, you'll correct me, Scott, it was a stoppage time winner, wasn't it?
It was.
On the first game of the season. After getting promoted, that's kind of what you want, and that can sort of set the tempo. It might be, a tough season. It might be a long season. I don't see Charlton being in the promotion shake-up necessarily. That doesn't mean that they won't be, but I think when you come up, I think Birmingham and Wrexham probably slightly different given the investment that they've put in, and of course Charlton, I'm more than old enough to remember Charlton being a staple of the Premier League and being a really solid, stable Premier League team. I think if you can sort of go, right, we'll stay up and then we'll try and kick on year from year. But if you said to Charlton fans, 2 games in, you got 4 points on the board, they'd be happy with that. Leicester have got 3 points. It hasn't been a particularly good start. They were knocked out of the League Cup by Huddersfield. First game of the season, they played Sheffield Wednesday. And for the first half of that game, Leicester were absolutely garbage. And Sheffield Wednesday, with all the problems that they've got, were just making Leicester look ordinary. Leicester eventually went on to win the game late on. Bit of good fortune along the way. As I say, then knocked out of the League Cup. Went to Preston last week. Managed to equalise and get a foothold in the game. But just defensively, they look so poor. And I think that unless Marty Cifuentes addresses that fairly quickly, then Leicester are going to be in for a long season. They're probably going to get a points deduction as well at some point. Fans are really not happy with the direction of travel.
What's the transfer situation for Leicester at the moment? Can they spend?
I think so, yeah.
Okay.
Obviously 1 or 2 have gone out the door, and the likes of Bilal El Khanous has been linked with Palace and has been linked with Tottenham, and I think perhaps 1 or 2 other clubs as well. We've seen Abdul Fatawu being linked. I think fans sort of expect that El Khanous probably will move on, but Fatawu will probably stay. Jeremy Monga, the 16-year-old who scored against Preston last week, looks to sign. I think they can sign players, and Leicester's recruitment was held up for many years as being an outstanding, just a really good method of you buy a player, you improve them, and you sell them and make a massive profit. Last few years, it's been totally garbage. It's been so poorly run, the club. So I think they can sign players. From what I'm aware of, they're just choosing not to, whether that's for PSR reasons or whatever. But I think they certainly do the 2 or 3 positions in the team that they could really do with fresh faces. But I think Charlton will be favourites going into that on Saturday. Absolutely.
Let's move into League One very, very quickly. I wanted to ask you about Tom Cleverley at Plymouth Argyle. Back-to-back defeats to start the season, not ideal. They host Blackpool at the weekend as well. I know we're starting on a bit of a negative in League One. We'll get to the positives, don't worry. But I think a lot was expected. I was very impressed by him at Watford. I expected quite a bit. And it seems like the story so far for Argyle, although they have brought a couple of players in this week, is that it has been difficult to attract people to Plymouth. Is that the big issue always with a club like that?
Possibly. Just looking at the pre-season odds, they were sort of 4th, 5th favourites to get promotion. So obviously, bookmakers sometimes do get it wrong, but they were sort of tipped to do quite well. They were at home to Barnsley, first game of the season, were beaten. They went to Bolton, they lost. They went to Lincoln and lost, and then obviously were beaten by Leyton Orient at home in midweek. Sandwiching those in the middle of those 4 games, they had a terrific comeback win against QPR in the League Cup, and they've got a League Cup game against Swansea next week. But yeah, Blackpool next for them. It has been a tough start for them. I don't think necessarily people thought that. When you look at the League One table, that Stevenage would be top and having won 4 out of 4, and that Bradford, having been promoted, would have 10 points from 4 games, and that Plymouth at this stage of the season would be in the relegation zone, and Reading in the relegation zone, who obviously they were, in and around the playoffs towards the end of last season. So I think there have been 1 or 2 surprises in League One in the opening sort of 2-3 weeks of the season. But I think I agree with you. I think Tom Cleverley's definitely got something about him. It hasn't been a great start to the season, as it hasn't for Peterborough United as well. Along with Plymouth, they haven't got a point on the board. I don't expect to see either of those 2 in the relegation zone come the end of the season. Although Peterborough, I think, do need to bring in some firepower up front. I saw them in the week, and they sort of work hard, but they were just lacking a bit of sparkle. But I think I'd be surprised if Tom Cleverley doesn't turn that around. They're playing a Blackpool side that have lost 3 of their 4 games, so they're not in great form either. But as we know, in the Championship, you can, or League One or League Two, you suddenly get 4 or 5 results together, and you can sort of move up 10 places in the table. It can be like that, and particularly at this stage of the season, obviously with not that many games played.
Jeff Peters, thank you very much for being with us with the latest on the EFL. Appreciate you taking the time to do that. Remember, live and exclusive action tomorrow night, Derby County against Bristol City in the Championship. Saturday lunchtime on talkSPORT 2, we'll have Charlton against Leicester, and then Wrexham against Sheffield Wednesday, both games from the Championship as well. Of course, talkSPORT 2, your home of the EFL. Let's head to Selhurst Park. The halftime whistle has gone there. European night of action. Has it lived up to top billing? Ian Abrahams.
Not really. Palace 0, Fredrikstad 0 at the break. Yes, Palace have had pretty much all the play, and they hit the post as well. John-Philippe Mateta just before half-time with a shot from the edge of the area that went through quite a few defenders before it actually struck the far post. But Palace haven't really imposed themselves, and actually the crowd have been a little bit flat at times, despite the fact beforehand they seemed quite up for it, especially when they were having a pop at UEFA and also Marinakis, the Nottingham Forest owner. But on the pitch, shots from distance from Wharton, which was comfortably saved by the goalkeeper, and as I say, the one by Mateta, which hit the post. Otherwise, Palace haven't really imposed. You know what they're missing? Missing Eberechi Eze. Palace 0, Fredrikstad 0.
Would have been lovely if Eze was out there at half-time just applauding the fans and saying goodbye. Would have been a nice moment.
Great. Where he is right now?
He's probably at Arsenal doing his medical.
Doing the medical.
Just reading through the contracts.
Maybe.
Looking at the noughts at the end of his salary, probably.
Takes about 3 pages to get through. He deserves it, though.
He does indeed. He does indeed. The Palace fans certainly deserve a goal tonight. We'll have the second half, of course. Updates from Ian Abraham with you very, very soon. We're going to talk to a West Ham fan straight after the break. You're listening to Transfer Insiders on talkSPORT with Ladbrokes. It's 18+. BeGambleAware.org. This is the Transfer Insiders. I'm Hugh Woozencroft alongside former Chelsea defender Scott Minto, and the NFL returns to Wembley in October. The Los Angeles Rams taking on Jacksonville Jaguars. We've got a massive competition for you to win some VIP tickets. We're giving you the chance to win 6 seats in a private box at Wembley Stadium with full hospitality plus $5,000 spending money. Here is how to enter.
18 plus, UK excluding Northern Ireland. For a chance to win, text the word cash to 83338 and you're in the draw. Text costs £2 plus 1 standard network rate message. You must have the bill payer's permission or enter for free by calling 0330 880 3338. All entries must be received by 25th August at 11 p.m. This is a talkSPORT limited promotion run on talkSPORT, Talk and Virgin Radio UK stations. See talksport.com for terms and conditions.
We're giving away some pretty decent prizes at the moment. I've got to say, that's one that I'd like myself.
Can I enter that?
See if I can actually enter that myself.
Probably not.
Not going to give us any tickets for free, are they, here at talkSPORT? Anyway, let's get to the phones next on Transfer Insiders. We were talking West Ham United a little bit earlier on, and Paul has given us a call. Good evening.
Hi, Paul.
Hiya. How you doing, gents?
Yeah, really good, thank you. How are you?
Well, yeah, a bit...
Says
I'm
it all.
excited about tomorrow because I so hope we put it out of the bag. But again, Falkirk, everybody keeps saying, yeah, I mean, it would be good if the crosses were going in the box. You've only got Wan-Bissaka doing that. Somerville's laid up like every other half the donkeys we've been buying over the few years on the operating table. But you've also got to get, Paqueta's got to start stepping up. He'll do 2 or 3, he'll do 10 flashy moves. He'll probably get 2 of them through and he'll look good. The rest, he'll lose the ball and then fall over or just stand there and watch. He's got to get his butt all the way back, start helping them out. But the biggest question I've got to ask is, how come Man United skint? Look at the money they're spending. Chelsea got 7 midfield players on their books. How are these clubs doing this? Are they well run and we're just pony? Because something is going on with this money scenario with the big clubs and us, like, you know, semi-big at the moment.
Yeah, not to go into a financial podcast or anything like that, but, you know, Manchester United bring in a lot of money, so they've created a facility to be able to borrow a lot of cash, more money to buy players, essentially. So that's how they've done it. Obviously,
not bad when you ask how many months away from going skinning, and then you go and spend over 200 million. But you're absolutely right. It's the incomings, basically, isn't it? It's the commercial and the way they're able to do that. Clearly, West Ham can't at the moment, allegedly.
Come to us. It's written in the stars.
I want to ask you about how the team. I want to ask you both about how the team attacks, actually, because this is one of the most incredible stats I've read in recent times. I know some people don't like stats, but of teams that played in the Premier League in the last 2 years since Graham Potter's appointment at West Ham, they are bottom for expected goals, for shots on target, for chances created from open play, and for passes played into the box, including crosses. They're just not very good at attacking. I mean, but why is that? Why is that? Let me ask Scott first, and then you can tell me what you're seeing from the stands.
I was going to pass that over to Paul, see what he wanted to say first. Go on, mate.
Sorry. No, I'll let you go.
No, I just think, I said about how I wanted Graham before Lopetegui, and I wanted Graham after Lopetegui, and he has come in. One thing I thought he could do was improve players, and at this moment, I haven't really seen it. And the West Ham fans have kind of... They've given him the sort of 6 months, 5 months, so however long it was, as to sort of get his feet under the table. But I still go along with, it's all about goals. And I mentioned about Fulkrug's been injured. You know, Wilson's been brought in, very good player, if he's fit. Paquetá has obviously had what's happened hanging over his head for the last couple of years. And they have just relied purely on Jared Bowen. I think Kudus wasn't the player, had gone in the second half of the season. So when you've got your attacking players who are just not there for whatever reason, whether it's because they're injured or they're in another place for whatever reason, I think it's a very difficult thing to do. And that's where I believe that Graham, it's a really interesting point about the PSR, isn't it, Paul, as to whether they are allowed to buy or not. Because if they don't, how do you feel about this current squad right now, not just in terms of the game tomorrow, but for the rest of the season?
Very worried, to be perfectly honest. As I say, who's the fastest player in our team at the moment? I was going to say Paqueta, but I mean, it's as I say, we've got Somerville, he's pace, skill. You know, I mean, Wan-Bissaka, what a stalwart.
Yeah.
I mean, for 10 million, so something's happening somewhere. I can't quite work that one out either. But to sell Kudus, especially to Tottenham, come on. Sell him to anybody, but not them. Please.
Are you confident of staying up? Very quickly, in a word, yes or no, are you confident you will stay in the Premier League despite the difficulties you face?
I've got to say, yeah, and otherwise I wouldn't be a supporter.
Well, you could say you...
Yeah.
Yeah?
Yeah, well, you could take that either way. Yes, we'll stay up.
All right, fantastic, Paul. We wish you all the best with tomorrow's game. West Ham at Chelsea coming up for you tomorrow night on talkSPORT. I can see more West Ham fans giving us a call. We're going to talk about you after the break, if the call's good. We'll also be talking a little bit about Manchester United, and you'll find out who's on the radar for Aston Villa very shortly. So Villa fans, stay with us. You're listening to the Transfer Insiders on talkSPORT. I'm Hugh Woozencroft alongside Scott Minto. It's all thanks to Ladbrokes, which of course is 18+. Make sure you check out gambleaware.org.
As Lewis Hamilton, now at Ferrari, dares to dream of a record 8th F1 world title, the Tifosi will be hoping the Brits can bring glory back to Italy. To many, Ferrari and Formula One are inseparable. They're the only team in the sport today to have competed in the first World Championship in 1950, are the most successful team in history, and have built some absolutely gorgeous cars. Their first driver's title was won in 1952 by Alberto Ascari. Considered one of F1's most dominant and best-loved champions, he drove the iconic Ferrari 500 and defended his title the year after. It was Juan Manuel Fangio in his Ferrari 250 who secured the team's next driver's title in 1956. Remember, he was world champion 5 times with 4 different teams. Mike Hawthorne, Phil Hill and John Surtees also won titles for Ferrari in the 50s and 60s, and the cars back then were beautiful, and they even sounded great, didn't they? Anyway, Ferrari went 11 years without winning a title until Niki Lauda won in 1975 in the iconic 312T. Throughout much of the 80s and 90s, though, Ferrari looked like they'd never go all the way again. The Professor Alain Prost came pretty close in 1990, but lost out to his bitter rival and former teammate at McLaren, Ayrton Senna. It was only when John Todt recruited a swathe of staff from outside of Italy, including Michael Schumacher, that the glory days returned 21 years after their last driver's title. The turn of the century saw the prancing horse sprint to an unprecedented 5 consecutive championship doubles. And after Schumacher left, Kimi Raikkonen reclaimed the driver's title immediately. But despite employing 1,500 people, the Iceman remains the last Ferrari world champion. So, 16 constructors' titles, 7 more than McLaren, and 15 drivers' titles, 4 more than, again, McLaren. Ferrari are truly Formula One's top team. Forza Ferrari.
This hour on the Transfer Insiders with me, Hugh Woozencroft, and former Chelsea defender Scott Minto. We'll discuss Alexander Isak and players going on strike, because sometimes footballers actually right to force their way out of a club. But what do you think? We'll discuss Manchester United as well, as they look to improve on last season's pitiful performance. Can they really go from 15th to a top 6 finish this season? And in a moment, we'll bring you some news relating to Aston Villa. 03717 223344. This is the Transfer Insiders on talkSPORT. Aberdeen now trailing FCSB of Romania by 2-0. Lincoln Red Imps 2 down against Braga. Second half underway in those two. Shelburne 2, Linfield 1 in Conference League qualifying. Hibernian 0, Legia Warsaw 2 now at half-time. And Shamrock Rovers have found an equaliser against Santa Clara of Portugal. Still goalless between Crystal Palace and Fredrikstad. We'll get you the latest there with Ian Abrahams very shortly indeed. But we wanted to bring you some news. Some breaking news regarding Aston Villa. talkSPORT understands that Villa have turned their attention to Chelsea striker Nicholas Jackson as a top target for Unai Emery, according to reports this evening. So, Nicholas Jackson from Chelsea, I think they were talking, how much did they want? 70 million?
70, 80 million.
It's a lot of money.
They're not going to get that much.
No.
They might try it, but he's on a long contract, so they can ask for what they want. And we just said about how incredibly in the last 2 years they've made a profit. So it doesn't look like PSR is a problem.
I think he cost about 20 million euros at about 17 million pounds. So I think they will make a profit on Nicholas Jackson.
Yeah, absolutely.
Maybe not as much as they want. Would Aston Villa be the right fit for him, given what you've seen of Nicholas Jackson?
Listen, I like Nicholas Jackson. If you look back at or research into where he started, he never went through a professional academy. So it's almost playing on just pure talent. And if you say the problems that Nicholas Jackson has, look, first of all, let's talk about the pros. He's strong. He's quick. He can run the channels. I mean, West Ham fans only need to look at what happened at the beginning of last season, the way he dominated that game. But he can have sort of defenders hanging off him as well by still bringing the ball down and playing it in. And the relationship with Cole Palmer was a very good one. Now, Palmer obviously is a world-class talent, but even Palmer wasn't playing the same when Nicholas Jackson was out of the team of Chelsea last season. So I like him. He's still raw. His cons are runs offside too much, although I think he's improved a little bit in that, and his composure in front of goal. kind of important if you're a striker, but his numbers are still not bad. So I feel there's still a lot more, as a couple more gears to go with him. I personally think Newcastle should go in. I mean, we'll talk about the Isak situation a little bit later on, but, you know, he's no Isak and he's not ready yet. But in terms of Aston Villa, I think it'd be great for Villa, but we're talking about Nicholas Jackson not being the number one at Chelsea anymore. And I actually think it's not Chelsea necessarily getting rid of him, but he's probably not happy with being not just number one, not even number two perhaps, but number three. Ollie Watkins is going to be the number one at Villa, surely. So, maybe they look to rotate. You can't just rely on him the whole time. I just get the feeling Nicholas Jackson's one of those players that wants to be seen as the number one. And I think if he went to Newcastle, he would be. If he went to Villa, he wouldn't be.
I think they could make him their main man at Aston Villa. I think they could. I think just
in front of Watkins.
Just because Ollie Watkins is getting older, well, yeah. At some point, they're going to have to make that transition away from Ollie Watkins, aren't they?
Forget birth certificate. Ollie Watkins is 25. You know, I'm telling you now, body-wise, the way he runs, how quick he is, how fit he is, how often he plays, rarely gets injured. Forget the birth certificate. He's got a good few years left in him. Now, you need an alternative. Of course you do. And you look at what they did in January where they got, you know, a couple of big names to come in towards the end of the season to try and help them over, to try and get into that Champions League place. So I do think they probably need another number. I'm just not sure for me that Nicholas Jackson is the one because I rate Ollie Watkins a lot. And Ollie Watkins has got a big year ahead of him. That number two spot as behind Harry Kane in the World Cup is
currently is
open to him for sure. So look, it's not his choice. I think it'd be good for Villa, but it'll be interesting to see how Emery deals with it because I'm not sure he dealt with that 100% brilliantly with Watkins when Marcus Rashford came in.
Okay. All right. Mention Marcus Rashford there, of course. Departing Manchester United. They're our next topic. They lost their opening game on Sunday against Arsenal 1-0 at Old Trafford. There were signs of improvement, particularly in attack, despite the scoreline. We saw Premier League debuts for Manchester United for Matheus Cunha, of course, and Brian Mbeumo. They've also added Benjamin Sesko into the mix from RB Leipzig, so a brand new front three. But how good is the squad as a whole? And, of course, how desperate are Manchester United for a goalkeeper? Because we mentioned at Chelsea and their need for a goalkeeper if they were to challenge at the top of the table. I wonder if Manchester United need a new goalkeeper to achieve their goals this season. We'll start on that one. What do you think?
In terms of goals?
On the goalkeeper.
The goalkeeper.
Do they need one to achieve their goals?
I was just looking at a text earlier, and it's gone now, actually. There's a Chelsea fan saying, what about Mark Guehi and Donnarumma? And I think if Chelsea...
To which club?
To Chelsea, as a Chelsea fan. And if Chelsea get those two, then maybe they're in the game for the title itself. So, Donnarumma, I mean, for whatever reason, he's surplus to requirements at PSG. There's no doubt about it. There's a lot of money been spent on him. And for him, I understand what Ruben Amorim was saying, that he didn't drop him. He just didn't put him in the squad. But if you got a number one, you put him straight into the team.
It wasn't even on the bench. I mean, it was like...
I mean, you know...
the other two deserve it.
No, exactly. Yeah. Which tells me all you need to know about what he thinks about Onana. Look, Hugh, you control games in midfield. You win games in both boxes. And I believe a goalkeeper, his role is not given as much credit as they should. You know, strikers get all the glory for sure. But goalkeepers, you need a top-class goalkeeper if you are. And I go back to, and people scoff at Crookie when saying that United could perhaps finish fifth. That fifth place is up for grabs.
We were talking about lethal goal scorers. Let's go to Selhurst Park. There has been a goal. Ian Abrahams.
Palace 1, Fredrikstad 0. I'm amazed this man is still here. Jean-Philippe Mateta. Long throw, which initially tried to volley from about 10, 15 yards out. It bounced outside the penalty area to... it was Will Hughes at the volley. It bounced outside the penalty area to Hughes again, who volleyed it this time more purposefully, and it was directed brilliantly with his head by Mateta, who was about 6 yards out past the goalkeeper. Really good centre-forward play. I don't want to sell Crystal Palace's players for them, but how this guy is still here is a mystery. Palace 1, Fredrikstad 0.
And Oliver Glasner runs off the bench, leaps into the air a bit like Jean Mateta celebrating and punches the air. So Oliver Glasner very happy, just alongside talkSPORT's Faker others there at Selhurst Park as well, enjoying the game this evening.
He's right though, Moose. He's a top striker, and I remember
they can't get rid of him.
I remember the Arsenal game where he came off the bench he absolutely destroyed them. It was only 20 minutes. I had to give him man of the match for a 20-minute
I don't think they can let Mateta go.
No, they can't.
They can't. No, if Eze gone and Gahey likely to go, I think you need that figurehead of Jean-Philippe Mateta, so he could be even more important to those Palace fans this season. We were talking about Manchester United and the need for a new goalkeeper, but generally speaking on Manchester United, many people after the weekend, despite defeat against Arsenal, suddenly were more attentive in terms of what they feel Manchester United can achieve. Because of the number of shots, I think they had, 22 shots against Arsenal, obviously a team that people think should be contending for the title. Did we learn much about Ruben Amorim's Manchester United and what they might be able to achieve?
I think we'll learn a lot this weekend.
Against Fulham?
Yes, because I thought United were, I don't want to use the word superb, but very, very good. And again, you can't judge a team on one game, but this is against I know they're playing at home. I know it's Manchester United, but they're playing against a team who almost have to win the title itself. So they had to come away with 3 points. And they didn't just sort of sit back and stay in the game and counter-attack the odd time, although they did counter-attack very well indeed. They dominated Arsenal. And I was just really impressed with how that front three worked. I still don't think Bruno Fernandes' best position is as a 6, but I still don't get the amount of money they've spent. Therefore, by making Bruno come back, he's better as one of those 10s. But I thought both Cunha and Mbeumo were very, very good indeed. And Mason Mount probably had his best game in a United shirt. So how are you going to follow that up now? Are you going to lose to Fulham in what is a difficult game at the Cottage? Or are you going to make a statement? 2 really good back-to-back performances. And actually, if you'd have played anyone other than Arsenal, or almost anyone other than Arsenal, you would have broken that defence down. Arsenal have the best defence in the Premier League and one of the best in Europe. So you're going to follow up with 3 points and a good performance or not? If they do, and again, it's a big jump, and we discussed earlier, didn't we, about how, to go from 15th to 5th that's a big leap. But I genuinely believe for half a dozen clubs, that 5th place is up for grabs this season.
Manchester United go to Fulham. They'll go to Grimsby. That's live on here on talkSPORT next Wednesday night in the League Cup. Host Burnley, but then it's Manchester City and Chelsea after that. That takes them up to kind of mid-September.
We'll know a lot then.
We will know a lot more then, I think. And obviously, I still think they need to do work in the transfer window. I was impressed by, to be honest, it wasn't the football that Manchester United played particularly that impressed me in that opening game. It was the attitude. It was the approach. It was, in many ways, how Manchester United should play at home in terms of intensity and competitiveness. No one should be showing up at Old Trafford and getting an easy ride. And Arsenal may have won 1-0. They certainly didn't. No. You saw the way the players dropped to the pitch. First game of the season, punch in the sky, the Arsenal players, It felt like one of those games towards the end of the season where they'd come to Old Trafford needing 3 points to stay in the title race or whatever it might be. It felt crucial to Arsenal. So you can understand that Manchester United will be a different prospect this season. What it means for where they might finish, I don't know. Like I say, I think we need a larger sample size. I'm not changing my predictions based on that one game. My prediction probably is a top 8 finish for Manchester United. My hope and expectation as a fan, I'm trying to enjoy it. I see it as a transitional season. If Manchester United can, it's more, again, I hate to say it. I know people say they have to get into Europe, they have to do this, they have to do that. If we can see these tactics begin to work, and it was a good step on the weekend in terms of Ruben Amorim's tactics, which haven't looked like they were going to work previously. So if that can go a step in the right direction, if they can get rid of some of these massive earners and deadwood out of the club, and they can begin to improve a lot of the talented youngsters that they have, I'm not too concerned, actually, with where they are. If we get to the end of the season, we're saying about Manchester United, all they need to do is sign better quality players. Everything is there. They just need better talent in the squad. I'll 100% take it right now, even if that means Manchester United finish 10th.
Okay. I think we talked about the goalkeeper. I think if they get the right goalkeeper, and again...
he wants to stick his neck out.
No, we always have to caveat with match day 1, you can't read too much into it, but it felt like it wasn't just the attitude, it wasn't just the playing, it was they felt comfortable in a Manchester United shirt. It's one of the biggest clubs in the world, and for far too long, the culture's been bad. It's almost been toxic. Inside the dressing room, there's no real leaders, or certainly not enough. But it looks like now, as poor as it was of Ruben Amorim, and I would criticise him, and I mean, Oliver Glasner's shown him how to play a 3-4-2-1. You know, he's come into Palace and done exceptionally well. But you cannot underestimate what it's like playing for a club like United, when the pressure, the weight of that shirt, and there's only a few players that can handle it. But it looks like now, it feels the start of an era. United fans have been desperate for years to get behind the team. If they show the right character, then you never know where they could go. And United should never be out of Europe. This is Manchester United we're talking about. But they have to take advantage of the fact that they're not. And that is a big advantage this particular season, especially if Amorim wants his players to understand his system.
You'll be clipped up. This is Manchester United we're talking about. Went viral over the summer, if you haven't seen the video. Yeah, I understand what you're saying, and I understand what you mean about the goalkeeper. I think a dynamic midfield player. They went in, obviously, or had conversations for Carlos Baleba at Brighton. You know, had they got that type of player, maybe I would have been saying top 6. But for now, I think they can make it into the top 8. And unless they do another couple of deals, I don't think a top 6 finish is going to happen. But you never know. It was a good start of the weekend despite defeat against Arsenal. We'll be talking about forcing your way out of a football club next. You're listening to Transfer Insiders on talkSPORT with Ladbrokes. It's 18+, begambleaware.org. You're listening to Transfer Insiders on talkSPORT. Hugh Woozencroft alongside Scott Minto, the former Chelsea defender, is here. We've got to discuss, as is customary on Transfer Insiders, Alexander Isak. Newcastle fans, turn the radio off. Time's ticking down. Isak currently is still a Newcastle player, but will he get his way and get a move by the end of the transfer window? Well, the Swedish striker recently posted a statement accusing his current employers of false promises. Here's the latest from the saga of the summer.
Alex Crook got a bit of news about Newcastle United. Alex, what you got?
Explosive statement has just been dropped by Alexander Isak. And he says, I've kept quiet for a long time. The reality is that promises were made and the club has known my position for a long time. Alexander Isak goes on to say, when promises are broken and trust is lost, the relationship cannot continue. That's where things are for me right now, and why change is in the best interest of everyone, not just myself.
Now, this is Newcastle reacting to that bombshell Instagram post from Alexander Isak, where he talks about broken promises and the loss of trust. That Alex remains under contract and that no commitment has ever been made by a club official that he can leave Newcastle United this summer. Alex remains part of our family and will be welcomed back when he is ready.
A crucial part of that statement in response, by the way, from Newcastle United, I think from the two statements, for me, that was the key line, that he'll be welcomed back as part of the family.
Will he?
They just know. It must be an awful position to be in if you're in the boardroom at Newcastle, if you're one of the coaches there, because you just know how important he is as a player to that team. At this stage, I don't know what he could do to be kicked out of that family and disowned, to be perfectly honest, because he's just a world-class talent. But he's essentially on strike at the moment.
Yeah.
And I just wondered, I wanted to talk to you about it. We've seen so much of it. We've got statements this summer. We've got players refusing to play, refusing to train, not going on pre-season tours. I mean, what has happened to players? We spoke earlier about deleting your club off social media. Is that even a thing? I don't even know. What does that mean? What does that mean? But anyway, players
that's
seem
the
to
modern day thing of showing you're unhappy.
Yeah.
Taking your club off your Instagram account.
What do you make of all of that player? I don't want to say player power. Just
they're trying to get it.
Players, voicing their position so publicly,
and yet, we've just been talking all evening about a player who thought he was going to one club, looks like he's going to another, and almost scored the winning goal in a game that, if he's thinking, I could get injured here and my move's going to go, was down to play tonight and didn't, probably because Arsenal said, we don't want you to, which pours scorn on the fact of Spurs saying, well, couldn't have bought him anyway because Palace wanted him to play in this game. We knew he was never going to play in this game if they're really far down the road. Well done, Eberechi Eze. I think I understand where these players are coming from, but I couldn't disagree more with their methods. And I don't think they need to either, because let's talk about Alexander Isak for one. We know that the richest owners in world football, but they can't put their hands in the pocket for PSR. But they certainly don't need to sell. So they could turn around and say, I don't care what you say. This is not what we do in our family. So therefore, you're going to stay. And I think Liverpool are waiting in the wings for Newcastle. They've probably been told by Newcastle, look, we will sell if you're willing to up it a little bit more. And they probably say, yeah, we'll up it a little bit more. But they've got to get the players in. So Newcastle actually could up their bid with Johan Wissa to 50, 60 million and get what they want. They could even say to Liverpool, you've got to give us an extra 20 million because we want another 20 million to get Wissa. The fact that it's not happened, the fact that there's a chance that Isak will not make this move. When I hear people say, oh, if he scores a goal and the fans will love him, I don't see that.
No way back for it with the fans.
I wouldn't say no way back. It's a very difficult uphill to do. And let's not forget, he hasn't done pre-season. So it's not as if he can hit the ground running, as it were. I'd be some special player if he was to play in his first game for Newcastle and scores 2 goals and scores 6 in 7 or something. But I just think it's not going to be that easy. And for him to try to divorce himself from Newcastle and therefore the fans who absolutely adored him up there, especially with scoring that winning goal or the goal in the Carabao Cup final, I think it's a very, very, very long way back.
I know most people won't have sympathy with Premier League footballers, particularly the money that they're on, particularly when they act in the way that Alexander Isak has. But for most of us, even if we sign contracts, we aren't effectively owned by our employers, which footballers are, if someone's paid £60 million for you to be employed by the company, clearly you're under...
I'm just trying to picture you now as a Premier League striker. You'd do what Isak would do, wouldn't you?
I wouldn't necessarily go on strike. I always wonder why. I get it. There's a loyalty bonus and payment that you kind of forego if you put in a transfer request. But if you're that serious about leaving the club, put in the formal...
You have to do that for sure.
Put in the formal transfer request, do it early, give the club months and months to get you a replacement.
No, but to be fair, in that respect, he said he has. He said the club knew where he was coming from. Now, I believe...
Is that, like I say, a formal transfer request? That is putting it in black and white, triggering the part of the article in your contract which says you forego the £5 million loyalty bonus. Look, he obviously hasn't done that.
Hugh, yeah, but he would do, because he's going to get that and more at Liverpool. So I don't think that's the issue. I think he just wants to go on to Liverpool because he believes that's a better option for him. I personally think he's been badly advised. And I think even if he gets the move and even if he goes to win trophies with Liverpool, it may take years, it might take till he's retired, but I think he will regret what he's done. I think if he had his time again, he'd do it in a different way. But he's so far down the road now, he can't go back.
There's no way back.
I mean, I personally think Newcastle, up your bid, say to Liverpool, you need to give us more money. And if you give more money, we can make the rest a deal. And we'll try and get someone else in as well, maybe a Nicholas Jackson. If you can get Nicholas Jackson and Visser and have a bit of change for the Isak deal, that's pretty good. What's the alternative? You keep Isak, a player who's going to get booed for the first 4, 5, 6 games unless he almost scores.
Months.
Well, unless he almost scores a hat-trick a game and he's not 100% fit. So while I don't like the fact of player power, and I think, decades ago the clubs had too much power. Now the players are trying to have too much power. But Q, if you sign a contract, you have to honour it. Or don't sign the contract in the first place.
Mm.
And
set the other way around. Because obviously we see regularly that the clubs aren't prepared to honour the contract. They never go, we've signed a 5-year deal with you. You've got 5 years. We'll play you. You get an opportunity.
No, they might not play you, but they have to honour it.
Yeah, okay. Financially, yeah, of course. Okay.
I mean, you don't sign a contract to say that you're going to be playing in every single game.
Yeah, that's
you
true.
have to prove yourself. So it does work both ways. If you sign that contract, you wanted that security.
You will get paid.
You will get paid.
You're absolutely right on that one. No way back for Isak. You had a very quickly. You had a time where you were leaving a football club. You didn't play.
No,
not through. You weren't on strike.
No. It's a long time ago. Obviously, 1994. I was at Charlton, and Arsenal came in for me, and I thought I was going to sign for them. I ended up signing for Chelsea, but just the last couple of games, they said to me, "We don't want you to get injured, so don't play." So I was like, "That's a shame, but okay." Yeah, but it wasn't anything.
You would have played.
So of course I would have played. 100% I would have played. I wanted to play because it was almost like my goodbye. But yeah, I can't really compare my move to Alexander Isak's move. Possible, potential move.
Hey, you went to Chelsea. Big move. Yeah. All right, let's check in on Selhurst Park with talkSPORT's Ian Abrahams. How are Palace getting on?
Hey Hugh, I thought every time Scott played for West Ham he was on strike. Now, any joking, Scott. It's still Palace 1, Fredrikstad 0 here. The goal scored by John-Philippe Messes 9 minutes into the second half. To be honest with you, Palace haven't created too many chances since then, despite, again, being in the ascendancy. And the Norwegian side, well, they're coming forward a little bit more now, as indeed they have to, although one of their players has been booked for time wasting. But again, I wouldn't say that Dean Henderson has been extended in the Palace goal. This might be drifting towards just a 1-goal victory for Palace. Palace 1, Fredrikstad 0.
Just checking the scores elsewhere. Aberdeen have pulled a goal back. 82 minutes gone. Aberdeen 1, FCSB 2, Lincoln Red Imps 0, Braga 2. In the Conference League qualifiers, Shelburne 3, Linfield 1. Hibernian 0, Legia Warsaw 2, and Santa Clara 1, Shamrock Rovers 2. We'll be back straight after this on Transfer Insiders. This is the Transfer Insiders on talkSPORT. I am Hugh Woozencroft. Alongside me is former Chelsea defender Scott Minto, and this is your whistle-stop tour of the biggest transfer news of the day. And we begin by talking about Eberechi Eze, who isn't involved for Crystal Palace this evening and is on the verge of a move to Arsenal. It had looked, for all that he was likely to be going, to Tottenham Hotspur instead. However, things change very, very quickly. Let's get the latest on it. Earlier on the Transfer Insiders, our very own Ben Jacobs discussed how the deal went down.
Yeah, so Eberechi Eze will join Arsenal. It's just a case of doing the formalities. He's not in the squad tonight for the UEFA Conference League fixture. And that's no surprise because it's close to £68 million, the final package, 60 million and add-ons. But obviously the medical still needs to be done. And because Palace are in a match day cycle, including playing this evening, all of it will be formalised in the coming days. And my expectation is that Eze will be announced before Arsenal's game at the weekend. And it's a surprise, but also not a surprise in the sense that Arsenal were first to the table in late June. They then didn't move in July, even though they'd met with the player because they wanted to give Ethan Nwaneri minutes at number 10. Spurs then were not going to move, but chose themselves to U-turn after missing out on Morgan Gibbs-White and James Maddison's ACL. That then resulted in Tottenham becoming front runners. It was a one-horse race for a while. Levy didn't get the deal done before the opening Premier League fixture of Palace against Chelsea, so Eze played. In hindsight, that was a critical error. And then as we broke on talkSPORT 48 hours ago, Spurs had the agreement in principle. And yesterday afternoon, Arsenal got their ducks in order and they got a deal. And as soon as it was 2 deals with Palace, Eze was always going to pick Arsenal. And as a consequence, he will be an Arsenal player in the coming days.
Now, it's difficult for me to advance the argument that going to Spurs over Arsenal would have been a good decision for Eberechi Eze because I believe Arsenal will challenge for, and over the 5-year contract he signed, if he's still at the club, he will win more, quite clearly, if he's at Arsenal, given where they are right now, but also given the stature of the football club, with all due respect to Spurs and their recent achievements, obviously. But the only way that I would say it would have been a better move to go to Spurs is the influence that Eberechi Eze would have had on that Spurs team versus the influence that I think he'll have on that Arsenal team, in that looking at him at Crystal Palace and when he's played his best football, in an attacking sense, he has been the fulcrum. He has been the player that you give the ball to help us create something, essentially. And he's excelled with that responsibility on his shoulders. Now, every great team should have a number of players that can do that, and he will still do that for Arsenal. But it won't be that he's the go-to. Bukayo Saka is an incredible player and will be a focal point for that attack. Quite clearly, Martin Ødegaard at the moment in his number 10 role and as captain has a big influence on how they attack. Arsenal fans will be screaming he hasn't played that well. I get it. Eze could be his replacement if he drops out of the team due to poor form. So he might play through the centre. In my mind, he plays off the left-hand side coming in for now. And obviously, you've signed Victor Gyökeres, who might not be a big part of the build-up play, but it's obviously, given the money that's been spent on him and the goals that he's been scoring, clearly meant to be a central part of Arsenal's attack. So the only way that I could see Spurs being a better decision for him is that in Spurs, I think he would have got a lot of the freedom and licence to create, to be the centre point that he got at Crystal Palace, which clearly got the best out of him in a football sense. Can you come with me on that journey?
No, yeah, but you still doesn't convince me. If I'm Eze, I'm still signing for Arsenal. Just because he's the main man at Spurs, and we need to be careful about sort of winning more trophies because Spurs have won more major trophies than Arsenal in the last couple of years. But actually, it's about winning trophies. What are the chances of winning trophies? And as much as Spurs... And look, they were shocking in the Premier League last season. Of that, there's no doubt. They were the worst of the rest. Those 3 were always going to go down. And then it was Spurs, if you look at that table. There's a new manager. There's a new feeling. He's adaptable. He's flexible. He's a very football intelligent and really tactical manager. And I like him. And he'll take Spurs at least to the top half this season. But I do genuinely believe that if Arsenal come calling versus Spurs are in the Champions League for 1 season. Arsenal are going to be in the Champions League for the whole of Eze's contract. And if you're wanting to chase the Premier League and the Champions League and to win those trophies, you're signing for Arsenal all day long, even if you're not the main man.
Does his signing... Well, let me ask you it from a wider context. When you look at... I'll call it 3. You want to add Chelsea to that 4 main title contenders, we think?
I say 3.5.
Okay, 3.5. Where does the quality of Arsenal's squad sit if they add Eberechi Eze?
I think if you look at Liverpool, and we don't yet know what's going to happen with Isak, but even if they don't get Isak, the quality of the squad, they won the Premier League, and yet they've got better on paper. Manchester City have bought so well and have got some attacking talent that's brilliant. Are they still open on the counter in the way that we saw against Al Hilal? I'm not sure, but they were brilliant against Wolves, but with respect, it was Wolves. So again, match day 1, we don't know. It's difficult to judge City. But in terms of positions, in terms of quality of strength and depth, in terms of the bench that we saw at the weekend, not one player would you say that if one was replaced for another, that is almost, you wouldn't say is not like for like. Yeah. And I think that's the sign of a top-class side. Now, Arsenal drew far too many games last season. They drew 13 in the Premier League. Now, if you've got that striker, which we've been talking about, but it's all very well having the striker, he still needs to be like Haaland needs to be given the chances at Manchester City against teams that will drop deep and try to make it difficult to break down, and they will. Then Eze, I believe, is right up there with Martin Odegaard and Saka. And I think, yes, he's not your typical wide player in the way that Saka is on one side, but to have him coming inside, playing those little balls down the outside or creating something himself, I think we can see this coming season, him scoring double figures and making double figure assists as well.
Wow.
Yeah.
Big shout. Okay. I think Arsenal will certainly be in the conversation for the title. I know people say they came second last year, but I think they were way off it. They put their focus onto the Champions League. My point is, when we get to the final 4 or 5 games of the season, maybe even 2 or 3 games of the season, are they still in the conversation? Is it still in touching distance? I get league position, but I think Arsenal fans will want to say at least we got to the final day of the season, we got to the penultimate game of the season, and we were in the title
race.
If
they're not, Hugh, then... I respect a lot what Mikel Arteta has done. If they're not in the shout for the Premier League within 5 games to go, then I think questions should be asked about his job. But I believe they will be. I predicted Arsenal to win the title, and that was even before Eze was signed. So I think it's another signing. He has got every single building block that he's asked for. Now go out and win it.
Very quickly on Spurs, who obviously missed out on the signing of Eberechi Eze. What next for them as a football club, but also during this transfer window?
Well, it's just so Spurs. We heard, Ben saying it was a one-horse race, and to finish second in a one-horse race is just so Spursy. And when you think about the players that they've either missed out or they've got injured at the moment, that's a massive blow. Kulusevski's injured, Maddison's injured, Son's gone. They missed out on whether they really wanted Jack Grealish or not. I don't know. Morgan Gibbs-White. They had to make that happen, and they didn't. So now, from now to the end of the window, it's absolutely crucial. If they are, I can't begin to describe how tough it is, and I've heard Martin Keown talk about it as well, to combine the Premier League with the Champions League physically, but psychologically and mentally as well, is so tough. We saw what Aston Villa, they struggled after Champions League games last season. So they need strength in depth for sure. And look, Thomas Frank is a good manager. I just hope come the end of the season, people, if he hasn't won a trophy, people don't turn around and say, well, Ange won a trophy, you haven't. Because I think he needs a little bit more help.
Yeah. Okay. All right. You're listening to Transfer Insiders here on talkSPORT with Ladbrokes. It's 18+. BeGambleAware.org. Let's quickly get an update from Selhurst Park. talkSPORT's Ian Abrahams.
Inside the last couple of minutes, it's still Palace 1, Fredrikstad 0. Palace have had chances. Muniz headed the ball wide when he was well placed about 7 yards out. Odsonne Edouard has come on. I forgot he was still a Palace player, the truth be told. Jean-Philippe Mateta's goal separates the two sides. You feel, though, it might not just be enough to go to Norway. It's a below par score. Palace 1, Fredrikstad 0.
This is the Transfer Insiders on talkSPORT. I am Hugh Woozencroft, alongside me Scott Minto, and this is your whistle-stop tour of the biggest transfer news of the day. Now, talkSPORT's own inside man, Ben Jacobs, joined us earlier to give us some information regarding Aston Villa, with reports suggesting Morgan Rogers could be a dream signing for Spurs, while Unai Emery's side could be looking to add a forward of their own.
Yeah, I think Morgan Rogers is a dream target for Tottenham, and if he becomes available for Chelsea and for several other clubs around the world, but it's a huge if, especially this late in the window. And I sense from Aston Villa's perspective that they're okay as far as PSR is concerned. Maybe not so healthy they can go out there and spend 70, 100 million in the last 10 days of the window, but I also think they're in a strong enough position for the last financial year that's closed and this current financial year that they won't need to cash in on Morgan Rogers. And even if they chose to, I think that the volume of interest and the price would not necessarily make Tottenham front runners. If anything, my read on the situation is everyone thinks Chelsea are going to do Alejandro Garnacho and Xavi Simons, and with quite some substance. But in a hypothetical where Rodgers became available, Aston Villa might take Nico Jackson, and I'd be staggered if Chelsea don't also ask the question about Morgan Rogers, because if anything, he's above Xavi Simons in their list, but he's a dream, whereas Xavi Simons might well prove to be the reality. So I think the door is probably shut on anybody getting Rodgers between now and the end of the window. But if he does become available, Spurs will not be the only club to explore that deal.
Wouldn't it be nice to be Chelsea right now? The options that they seem to have on the table. Let's talk about Morgan Rogers of Aston Villa. He's won this week, I think, PFA Young Player of the Year. Was that right? In the Premier League, which is absolutely incredible given where he was. Even in that Middlesbrough team, I was going to watch him in the Championship. Good player. Never saw this coming. I can't believe how well he's done since becoming a Premier League player. Deserved all the plaudits. Got his England debut as well. And Aston Villa would want a player like him to be the jewel in their crown. They wouldn't want to let him go. And it would be, again, devastating to think that the PSR rules would mean that Villa would have to sell such a prized asset. But a dream signing, as Ben Jacobs described it, if it were to happen, Morgan Rogers possibly going to Tottenham Hotspur, what would you make of it?
I'd be absolutely flabbergasted even more so, as Ben was saying, that if there are other teams coming in that Spurs will bid more than anyone else, but Villa will not sell Morgan Rogers. I mean, that is PSR at its very worst, and they surely must need to sell others, 2 or 3 others, rather than just him, if that is a problem. But they've just sold Jacob Ramsey. I don't think there will be a PSR problem anymore. I haven't seen the books of Villa, obviously, but Hugh, I did the game for talkSPORT against Manchester City at Villa Park, and he was absolutely outstanding, to the point where, and I'd seen enough of him to say that he's not just pushing to be in the England squad, but actually to be that number 10. And we've got some good number 10s. I genuinely think he's that good. So if Villa do somehow say that we'd be quite happy to sell, boy, would I want Chelsea to come in. But even then, where would he play? Because obviously number 10's his favourite position, but he perhaps could play off the left if need be.
I don't think Chelsea care.
No, maybe not.
They just want all the players they can possibly get. It's like Pokemon Go when it comes to Chelsea.
Absolutely.
I've got to catch them all.
And you know what, Chelsea, I'd love to see them go in and get Donnarumma, and then maybe even Mark Guehi. I think at the back is where they sort of need to sort it. But Morgan Rogers coming off the left alongside Cole Palmer and Pedro Neto on the other side. Yeah, but I don't see Villa selling Rodgers at all.
You've got a long wish list, haven't you? You're an expensive date. Scott Minto. How many players do you want? Unbelievable.
I'm just thinking that it's the Chelsea hierarchy who are paying for all this, so why not?
That's true. Todd Bowley, take me out. Okay, all right. We'll come back to talking about Nicholas Jackson possibly moving to Aston Villa in a moment. But first, it's full time at Crystal Palace, and hopefully we'll be saying this a lot. It's a win for Palace in Europe. Ian Abrahams.
Yeah, not a big win, but a win's a win. Palace 1, Fredrikstad FK 0. So first ever game in proper European competition for Palace, and they win it thanks to Jean-Philippe Mateta's second half goal. It was a long throw that took 2 volleys from Will Hughes. The second one purposely diverted by the head of Mateta beyond the goalkeeper and into the back of the net. Mateta hit the post in the first half. There were numerous chances for Palace to extend their lead before and after the goal, but the precariousness of a 1-goal advantage shown right at the end when Henrik Skovvold went through and had a shot which was only just wide of Dean Henderson's far post. No Eberechi Eze, not exactly no problem, but life after Eze begins with a Palace win in Europe. Crystal Palace 1, Fredrikstad 0.
Well, one player that Todd Bowley might want to get rid of at Chelsea is Nicholas Jackson. And we heard he was linked to Aston Villa. What do you make of that potential move, Scott?
I mean, he's not going to be playing. He's not in the squad for the West Ham game. I'm surprised. I'd like to see him stay at Chelsea, but he's gone from first choice to third choice. Now, is it the club trying to get rid of him again? Is it about balancing the books? Well, actually, in the last 2 years, they've made a £90 million profit on the books. So from a financial point of view, they don't need to. So therefore, is it the players saying, I'm not happy with that? And I think it's probably more that. I always think, Hugh, when you've got, like, you know, Fergie had 2 extra strikers when it was 4-4-2. I think you need 2 extra strikers as well. And therefore, you've got one playing, you've got one on the bench, and just think that someone might be injured. When Nicholas Jackson was injured for Chelsea for a good few months last year, there's no doubt about it that the team's form dipped, as did Cole Palmer's as well. So whatever people think about him, he's big, he's strong, he's quick, he can run the channels, he can hold the ball up. And actually, with really good coaching, he can get even better in terms of staying on side at the right time and then his composure in front of goal. I think he'd be a great signing for Villa. My only question would be, what happens to Ollie Watkins then? He's just had Marcus Rashford last season come in and disrupt him a little bit. You know, Ollie Watkins wants to be that number 2 to Harry Kane in the World Cup. And I really like Ollie Watkins. Forget the birth certificate. He's young enough to go on for a very long time. He's fit. He doesn't get injured very often. He scores goals. He's Premier League ready. I know there's a combination between the Europa League and that. And obviously, again, I talked about at Chelsea, you need a couple of extra strikers, and Villa do need that. But I have to wait and see how Ollie Watkins responds to that. It's what he has to do.
I like the addition of Jackson if he were to go to Aston Villa, but they can't pay too much money for him. 50, 60 million, somewhere in that region. I still think it's top end of what
it is.
for Nicholas Jackson. So we'll see where the money is when it comes to that and whether Villa have the headspace to be able to pay it. But there you go. Nicholas Jackson may be on his way out of Chelsea. And by the way, tomorrow night live on talkSPORT, we'll bring you a cracking London derby between two of Scott's former sides as West Ham take on Chelsea. talkSPORT's very own West Ham fan, Ian the Moose Abrahams, joined us earlier from Selhurst Park and gave his scathing opinion on the current makeup of the squad.
Yeah, I'm not going to be an apologist for Graham Potter, but what I will say is that he is possibly the right man for West Ham, but he's in charge of completely the wrong squad. I mean, Scott said it before, the squad is not good enough. It doesn't matter how you try and dress it up and how you want to mention that West Ham have got these players and those players. You look through the squad and it just isn't good enough. They signed a goalkeeper from Leicester who made at least one, if not two errors last week. Kyle Walker-Peters was a free signing that should have been made, if at all, before Emerson was brought to the club. Now I don't understand that signing because he's not going to get into the team ahead of Wan-Bissaka, and he's not going to get in either ahead of Emerson or the other new signing that West Ham made this summer, El Hadji Malik Diouf. The rest of the money that was gained, pretty much gained from the Declan Rice deal, has just been completely squandered. But for me, the only two decent signings, or the signings that have worked at the club in the last few years, have been Souček, who's still there, and Jared Bowen. And this goes back donkey's years. The signings of players has been appalling, and I don't think you can lay any of that at Graham Potter's door.
So, sitting on the fence there, Ian Moose Abrahams. Yes, El Hadji Malik Diouf, £20 million. Mads Hermansen, $20 million as well. And free transfers for Callum Wilson and Kyle Walker-Peters.
Jean-Claire Todibo as well, even though he was there on loan last season.
His loan was made permanent.
And
exactly.
He wasn't brilliant last season.
No, but they had to pay it. That was the deal.
Obligation.
What do you make of Graham Potter right now at West Ham and what he needs to keep this team in the Premier League, possibly, but also to be successful?
I think he needs help with the recruitment. I think West Ham fans have seen that last season it wasn't good enough. I wanted him to try and, improve the players a little bit more, but even then he found that hard to do. So you're looking at the summer and saying, right, I'm expecting good recruitment. But if the PSR is a massive issue, then he's got a problem on his hands because in midfield there's not enough legs. We saw the goals that were conceded that were just two crosses into the box at 2-0 against Sunderland, the way that was always going to be game over. Forget about the third goal. And then up front, you've got Callum Wilson and Nicholas Füllkrug, who are injury prone. So you're relying so much on Jared Bowen. He needs help in almost every department. But, the goalkeeper didn't cover himself in glory for sure, but I think he'll be good for West Ham. I really do. At this moment in time, it's a 14th place again at best.
They need a lot. They need youth. They need dynamism. They need intensity. We shall see. Scott, thank you very much indeed. If West Ham do any more business between now and the end of the transfer window, you'll of course hear about it first on talkSPORT. And remember, West Ham versus Chelsea live on talkSPORT Friday night, 7 p.m. for all the build-up to an 8 o'clock kickoff. This has been the Transfer Insiders, the show live tomorrow on radio, YouTube, Smart TV and the talkSPORT app from 7 p.m. And you can catch the podcast on Apple, Spotify,